Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Mythical Card Master. Start with the Night. Chapter 41. On top of the giant wall, a silver-haired old man looked back. He looked across the dark landscape forest and clear lake to the brightly lit Liming City. The old man's name is Li Zhang. He is the card master of Monroe, the Great Knight of Violent Bear, and a researcher at Dawn City's Dark Research Branch. After he learned the information about new history from Monroe, his keen professional sense made him realize that something was wrong, and he immediately reported the information to the Card Master Alliance. In just half a day, the Alliance building was operating at high speed, and the plan against the trolls was given the green light. The city's live broadcast authority has been released. All staff in the Alliance building and surrounding areas have basically evacuated, and the central system is fully coordinating actions. The old man turned back and asked in the dark direction in front of him. Monroe, can the Wild Hunt Knight you said really solve everything? A figure walked out of the darkness. This person was Monroe. Monroe took off his hood and stood with the old man looking at the city in the dark night. He smiled and replied, "There is no doubt that Andrew was the strongest man of our time, and it was he who ended the age of trolls. He's a natural troll buster. There is no need to worry, Card Master, not to mention you are not without backup options. He is truly a legendary figure." The old man sighed. He was born at the end of the Dark Age, but he was able to break the limits and lead the alien race to a new future. As he spoke, he paused, put on his hat, and walked towards the wilderness on crutches. The Card Master Alliance does still have backups, but it is almost impossible to eliminate this kind of troll that can hide in human society, and we will also pay a greater price. However, with Lord Andrew here, we can solve this troll crisis at the minimum cost. What we have to do now is coordinate manpower to minimize losses and casualties. As long as the bloodline shackles are broken again, the tide of darkness will automatically recede, and we will be able to free our hands. Alliance building parking lot. As Chu Ming threw the card, everyone's eyes were firmly attracted by the card, and they watched it fall to the ground in amazement. Troll slaughterhouse. Golden light flashed, and then a burst of blood cut through the air. Bang bang bang. Whether they were humans or trolls, whether they were at the live broadcast or watching the live broadcast, they all felt their hearts tightening and beating faster uncontrollably. What's this? Under the gaze of the whole city, blood and corpses spurted out from where the card landed, instantly covering the ankles of all the trolls and spreading far away. The trolls stopped one after another and froze in place, not daring to move easily. A violent aura rose, and the air turned blood-colored. In a daze, everyone seemed to smell the strong smell of blood and burning flesh. Then they were surprised to find that the long swords in the hands of the student knights were suddenly surrounded by a thin layer of blood mist. When the domain was spread out, a nameless fear surged out of the trolls' hearts, and most of the bloodthirsty in their eyes was gone. A troll took a few steps back. After all, he couldn't resist the fear in his heart, so he turned around and ran away without any hesitation. My mother called me home for dinner, so I left first. Want to run? Chu Ming's eyes were sharp and he squeezed with his right hand. The terrifying bloody pressure was like a waterfall, and blood surged up on the ground. The nearby troll exploded directly, and the remains and corpses fell into the blood and were quickly buried. What kind of power is this? Impossible. Lyle looked at the place where the trolls disappeared with horrified eyes, and his eyes covered with blood suddenly became more than half awake. Holy crap, that's a domain card. This is outrageous. This card is so awesome. The audience who were still watching the live broadcast instantly sat up in shock, with a hint of excitement in their tone unconsciously. Lyle. Chu Ming raised the hunter's sword and looked at him calmly. Why didn't you run away when you saw me? You even sent me to my door. Lyle's hands couldn't stop shaking. Finally, he couldn't resist the fear that came like a tide. He stumbled, squeezed past other trolls and ran outside. Unfortunately, it's too late. Chu Ming sighed, his arm twitched rapidly, leaving an afterimage, and the hunter's sword flew out like a cannonball. Bang! The long sword fell to the ground, and a powerful impact struck all around. Blood splashed, and Lyle and dozens of nearby trolls instantly exploded into a mist of blood. The audience who saw this scene were all dumbfounded and forgot themselves with excitement. On the other side, the trolls who saw this scene retreated in panic, wanting to exit this terrible place. Let's all come together. Chu Ming's anger sank into his dantian, and a force gathered in his legs. Immediately afterwards, he bent his legs and exploded directly into the group of monsters. The next second, the previous massacre in the crowd was repeated, but this time, the target was changed from ordinary people to trolls. Ah! Screams continued to sound, and the broken bodies of trolls kept flying out. The scene was very bloody. Dean, we are here too. The student knight watched this scene, howled excitedly, then raised his long sword wrapped in blood mist and rushed into the troll group. With the blessing of the troll slaughterhouse, several student knights gained powerful strength. They could chop up a troll with one sword, just like chopping melons and vegetables. Seeing that the student knight who was still carefree the day before suddenly changed from being lazy and working so hard, all the card masters couldn't help but feel ashamed and began to question whether they were card masters or whether the young knight in front of them was the card master. In this world filled only with blood, trolls will fall every minute and every second. I don't know how much time passed, but the surrounding area was empty, and almost all the trolls had been slaughtered. Chu Ming shook off the black blood on his sword, and his whole body was surrounded by a thick blood mist. Looking at the hazy figure in the bloody world in the live broadcast, everyone's hearts trembled, and their fear of the troll dissipated a lot. It seems that dark creatures are not so scary. In the screen, Chu Ming exhaled a breath of turbid air and opened his palms. The bloody corpses on the ground suddenly felt an inexplicable attraction and rushed towards his palm. A few seconds later, when the domain disappeared, the blood color in the surrounding air gradually faded, and the troll slaughterhouse returned to his hands. With the blood mist of the hunter's sword replenishing his physical strength, facing the hordes of trolls Chu Ming wasn't that difficult. On the contrary, expanding the troll slaughterhouse domain requires a lot of his mental energy. After maintaining the realm for so long, he was almost ready to exit the trance state. But fortunately, the results of the battle were also very fruitful. Except for some trolls who were still hiding and were alone, it could be said that he had almost wiped out all the trolls in the entire city. The remaining trolls were not able to survive at all. On the contrary, some trolls were shocked by the scene of being slaughtered by Chu Ming. Their bloodline shackles were broken and turned directly back into ordinary cards. Chu Ming adjusted his breath and turned to look at the Alliance building. King of Trolls, the situation is over, aren't you planning to show up yet? The sound spread throughout the empty street, and after a few seconds, several figures wearing cloaks walked out of the Alliance building. Haha, Andrew, long time no see. Jiwen walked out of the shadows and looked at Chu Ming with a smile. Jiwen, maybe he is not looking for you. The 5 mysterious people next to him suddenly spoke and lifted their hoods. A violent aura hit his face, and Chu Ming couldn't help but squint his eyes. When did the Troll King have 6? What, Andrew, are you scared? Jiwen's face gradually became distorted. You looked so arrogant when you executed me in the square. Chu Ming sneered and said, Jiwen, you seem very proud. Jiwen couldn't help laughing. Ha ha ha, Andrew, I admit that you are very powerful. But how much strength do you have left after the battle just now? And these 5 kings behind me were all born in the wilderness, and they are even stronger than me. What are you going to do to fight me? Chu Ming shook his head and looked at him sympathetically. Jiwen, you know, you are like a dog now. You. Jiwen's face turned purple with anger at these words. Stop talking nonsense. One of the old knights stopped him, and then stared at Chu Ming with sharp eyes. Boy, are you ready to die? After saying that, the muscles on the 6 people's bodies continued to expand, revealing their dark skin and ugly faces. Roar! Waves of blood pressure came out, pressing on Chu Ming's shoulders. Chu Ming snorted lightly, put down the hunter's sword under the pressure, and sighed. As the saying goes, you can't step into the same river twice, but it's a pity that, Jarvan, you don't have the memory of 2 weeks. What's the meaning? Jiwen was stunned for a moment. Chu Ming didn't answer. The blood mist on his body began to flow, and a powerful momentum surged from him. The King of Trolls stood there, feeling that the air around them was so heavy that it could drip with water. Their expressions changed and their hearts quickened. Hunting mania. War hunt. Airflow surged out from Chu Ming's body, making his skirt rustle. As he took one step forward, the King of Trolls seemed to have his heart skip a beat. Suddenly, a strong pressure came from all directions. Jiwen's expression changed and he knelt down on the ground. How can it be so powerful? The eyes of several other troll kings were full of disbelief and they persisted. Jiwen, what's going on? You lied to us. After hearing the anger of others, Jiwen couldn't help but roared, you ask me. Didn't you say you have nothing to fear? Mob. Chu Ming commented and lifted Jiwen up. No, Andrew, let me go. Jiwen felt as if he had returned to the day of the execution in the square, and tears of despair could not help but flow from his eyes. Jiwen, you have such a short memory, don't blame me. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Ming faced the camera, pressed Jiwen to the ground, and flew his head away with a sword. Hiss. The audience who saw this scene couldn't help but gasped. No. Some trolls who saw this scene fell to their knees in pain, with black mist emerging from their bodies, and after a while they turned back into ordinary cards. After kicking Jiwen's body away, Chu Ming looked like he was carrying a chicken, ignoring their cries and executing all the troll kings one by one. It seemed that the scene of the execution was too shocking, and the scene was completely silent. The guard card master stared at Chu Ming closely, not daring to take a breath. Suddenly, an ethereal shattering sound echoed over the entire city. The blood shackles on the troll's body broke one after another, painful roars were heard, and countless black mist floated into the air. Are you saved? Very good. People who were lucky enough to escape the troll attack walked out of their houses and looked in the direction of the Alliance building in confusion. Master Andrew, thank you. Several guard card masters came to their senses and gathered around Chu Ming, their faces full of admiration. You are welcome. Chu Ming shook his head, put his sword back into its sheath, and prepared to leave. Wait, Lord Andrew. A security card master's cell phone rang, and a man's voice came from it. Hello, I am Zhang Xin, the director of the Security Bureau. Can you tell us the identity of your card master? Chu Ming paused and didn't look back. No comment. After the words fell, Chu Ming turned into a golden light and flew into the city. Is this like this? Zhang Xin was silent for a moment, then turned to the guard card masters next to him and said, You have worked hard tonight, go back and rest. Your achievements will be remembered by the citizens. Thank you, Director. The guard card masters' eyes lit up and their faces were full of smiles. After the excitement subsided, the guard card masters came back to their senses and looked at the student knights behind them. Somehow, they seemed to feel that their compatibility with the cards had improved. But when they knew the reason for the improved fit, their expressions couldn't help but become weird. It turns out that the sudden improvement in compatibility was not because they improved their tacit understanding in battle, but because their admiration for Andrew just now resonated with the student knights. Although it's a little strange, it should be considered a good thing. Early morning. In the bedroom, a golden light went straight through the closed window and returned to Chu Ming's hands. Under Jie Hai's gaze, Chu Ming gradually woke up. Nothing happened, right? He sat up, shook his dizzy head, and asked Jie Hai. Seeing Chu Ming's safe return, Jie Hai first breathed a sigh of relief, then shook his head. I heard some movement downstairs, but it quickly returned to calm. It seems like someone else took care of the trouble. Chu Ming believed it should be other card masters who took action. Although the scale of this troll attack is indeed large, it is not everywhere. Even if there are a few scattered ones attacking the community, they will be dealt with by other card masters. In fact, most of the trolls are concentrated in the city center, which is where the real battleground is and where the most damage has been done. A remote community like Chu Ming's is actually much safer than the city center. The real troll disaster has been resolved, and it is estimated that the tide of darkness will dissipate soon. But post-disaster construction is the real big problem, but I don't have to worry about that. I can just go to school without any worries. Chu Ming stretched out and groped on the bed with his hands. After touching for a long time and finding nothing, he was stunned for a moment, turned to Jie Hai and asked. Jie Hai, have you seen my mobile phone? Mobile phone. Jie Hai was confused for a moment, and then gestured to Chu Ming uncertainly. Master, are you referring to that square, glowing magic item? Chu Ming nodded. Well, it kept ringing last night. I was afraid of attracting the attention of dark creatures, so I stuffed it into my shoe. Chu Ming patted his forehead helplessly, bent down to remove the rag stuffed in his slippers, and took out his mobile phone. Jie Hai, it's best not to stuff your cell phone into your slippers in the future. Hearing this, Jae-hi nodded seriously and said, "Don't worry, young master, I will find a more secluded place for you to hide next time." "Ah, forget it." Chu Ming sighed and turned his attention back to his phone. He opened the screen and countless messages popped up instantly. Dozens of messages popped up on the phone instantly. After Chu Ming glanced at them, his eyelids jumped. After Liming City was attacked by trolls, Wu Qingfeng was worried that something would happen to him and called him many times. However, at that time, his consciousness was still on Andrew and he did not see him at all. And Jae-hi didn't know what the phone was for, he just thought it was some magic item and didn't help him pick up the phone. It's over, Wu Qingfeng won't think that he is gone now. Thinking of this, Chu Ming paused in his heart and quickly made a phone call. The call was connected within a few seconds of dialing it, and Wu Qingfeng's anxious voice came from the other end of the phone. "Hey, Chu Ming, are you okay?" Chu Ming coughed a few times to cover up his embarrassment, and said sheepishly, "Ahem, Lao Wu, I just woke up, what happened last night?" Wu Qingfeng was speechless, breathed a sigh of relief, and said angrily, "You kid. The sky is almost falling, but you can still sleep. Last night there was a large-scale attack by dark creatures in Dawn City. I couldn't get through when I called you. I'm almost dying of anxiety. But as long as you're fine, don't go out for the next few days. I don't know what dangers there are out there." Chu Ming touched his nose and smiled. "Don't worry, old Wu. No matter what, I am still a card master. If I can't beat you, why can't I run away?" "Haha, boy," Wu Qingfeng sneered, "the dark creatures don't care whether you are a card master, and those guys are more difficult to deal with than you think. Some dark creatures can survive for several minutes even if their heads are cut off. You don't know how many times you have died in just these few minutes. Anyway, it's always good to be careful. Don't get carried away just because you are a card master. There are quite a few card masters dying in the wilderness these days." Forehead. Chu Ming was silent for a moment, thinking about whether to tell Wu Qingfeng that he had just killed countless trolls. After thinking for a while, he finally said helplessly, "I know, I'll hang up if it's okay." Seeing that he was about to hang up, Wu Qingfeng quickly added, "The school start has been delayed. Come back in 4 days." Chu Ming was stunned for a moment. Something happened at school. "It's nothing. It's just that an empty classroom in the school was bombed by dark creatures. This is not bad. The most troublesome thing is that the school has to determine the situation of you students and cooperate with the Liming City municipal government at any time to carry out rescue." "Is this so?" Chu Ming touched his chin and hung up the phone with a strange expression. When he didn't want to go to school as a child, what he looked forward to most was that the school would be bombed suddenly, so that he wouldn't have to go to school. What shocked him a little was that he didn't expect that something like the school being bombed could actually happen to him. "Since I can't go to school, I'll just take a few days off." 3 days later, the night before school starts. On the balcony, Chu Ming lay on the chair and lazily looked at the starry sky and the towering ancient trees in the distance. "Master, this is the cold beer you asked for." Jae-hi had just returned from the supermarket, dressed as a knight, holding a shopping bag in his hand, and handed him a can of beer. "Sorry to trouble you, Jae-hi." Kai. Pulling the tab open, bubbles emerged, and Chu Ming took a sip. Although I still felt a little worse just drinking cold beer, it was a pity that the owner of the barbecue stall downstairs was attacked by a dark creature and was injured and hospitalized. If you want to buy barbecue, you have to go to a snack street a little further away. Hey, I'm quite lazy. Lying on the chair, Chu Ming sighed. After solving the real-life troll disaster 3 days ago, he has obviously had a lot of free time. The writing of history must at least wait until the general outline of the history of the other world is summarized by the Card Master Alliance before he considers continuing. For now, let's stop for a while. As for the start of school soon, it is even more unnecessary to preview the courses of the Card Master class in advance. The various courses that ordinary card masters need to learn, such as card communication, application and combination of card materials, these are not of much use to Chu Ming. The so-called card communication science is to teach modern card masters how to communicate with those medieval antique cards, reduce the generation gap, and improve the compatibility with the cards. With years of history behind him, Chu Ming can easily maximize his compatibility with the cards. Even cards like Zhe-Hai that are obtained from the writing state can improve the compatibility to a certain level by getting along day and night. And because Chu Ming himself is a legendary knight with a modern appearance, when he descends on Zhe-Hai, he can display a level of strength that far exceeds that of Zhe-Hai himself. So for him, the course, card communication, is really no more useful than toilet paper. The course, application and combination of card materials, was somewhat useful to him, but not much. The main reason is to let him know more materials so that he will not be ripped off when he goes to the black market to sell card materials. However, the content of this course is actually not much. If you want to learn more in-depth and detailed material science, you have to learn it at Cardiff University. Chu Ming lay on the balcony and blew in the evening breeze for a while, then turned on his mobile phone and browsed the forum. Due to Chu Ming's wonderful live broadcast 3 days ago at the entrance of the Alliance building, major video websites and forums have been flooded with topics related to him in the past few days. Chu Ming, nicknamed the Mysterious Knight, has repeatedly appeared on the hot search list in Liming City, and curious netizens have also been discussing his true identity on the website forum. Even the officials came off the field and shouted many times, hoping to talk and cooperate with the card master behind Andrew, which invisibly helped Chu Ming gain a wave of popularity. But so many days have passed, and the identity of the Mysterious Knight has long been revealed. Card masters from all parties who had obtained new cards were dismissed one after another. While the popularity was still there, they wrote long stories in the forum, such as Analysis and Exposure of Black Snake Town, Andrew and his 7 legendary students, and so on. Serious science popularization and historical explanation. These card masters are fairly normal, and the stories they write are somewhat true. Some card masters went too far and shared their newly made novels with netizens. For example, The Romantic History of the Legendary Knight, Dean Andrew and the Obedient Female Student, Andrew is Not at Home, and a series of novels and stories that even Chu Ming would say, WTF, after reading them. Sometimes I admire these troll netizens. Chu Ming sighed. It's well written. If I hadn't experienced it, I would have almost believed it. But it seems to look pretty good, ahem. Although the topics on the internet are gradually turning to strange places, the unprecedented popularity just shows how popular Chu Ming is now. If he comes out now to clarify the misunderstanding, use his popularity to attract fans, and launch live broadcasts to bring goods, he can make a wave of hot money with less words. Well, it's better to go to bed early. We have to report early tomorrow morning. Chu Ming yawned a few times and returned to the room. The next morning, Chu Ming set out lightly and took Zhe-Hai to school by bus. The number 3 middle school in Liming City where he attends is not far from the community and can be reached in 15 minutes by bus. Because of this, Chu Ming had no plans to stay at the school. After all, compared to the school dormitory, your own cabin has more privacy and peace of mind. On the road, the bus passed by, and Chu Ming looked out the window. Beside the street, a card master directed the card knights to uproot the broken landscape trees and plant new saplings. The window glass of some street shops has also been given a new look, and all debris on the ground has been swept away. Due to the small number of trolls in his urban area, not many places were destroyed. After so many days of repairs and maintenance, the place has basically returned to the way it looked before the attack. However, this large-scale troll attack caused panic, and many people hid in their houses and did not dare to go out. It will take a lot of time for the city to return to its former prosperity. 15 minutes later, Chu Ming arrived at the school gate. He turned Zhe-Hai back into a card, checked it with the card master, and then entered the school. After the senior year of high school, ordinary people and card masters are divided into 2 different classes. One is the ordinary class and the other is the card master class. Before he obtained the history book, Chu Ming's original life trajectory was to spend a year in an ordinary class, then go to an ordinary university to study, or go out to work in society early. But no matter what, it would take him several years of struggle to raise the funds needed for the resonance ceremony. And the card that resonates may not be usable. Even if it can be used, it might just be a white card. But now Chu Ming's fate has changed. He was successfully arranged by Wu Qingfeng to enter the card teacher class, and he is about to spend his senior year of high school with some unfamiliar faces. Following the guidance on the bulletin board, Chu Ming walked around and arrived at the door of a spacious and bright classroom. As soon as he entered, the female head teacher standing on the podium pushed up her glasses and came towards him with a roll call sheet. "This classmate, what is your name?" Chu Ming bowed politely. "Hello, are you teacher Dyslexia? I am Chu Ming. It turns out to be classmate Chu Ming. Qingfeng has often mentioned you to me," the female teacher said enthusiastically with a smile on her face. "Congratulations on becoming a card master, joining the card master class and becoming one of them. Come in, you're the last ones to arrive. Sorry, I'm a little late." Chu Ming apologized and was immediately pulled to the podium by the woman. "Introduce yourself to everyone, or introduce your cards." Chu Ming nodded helplessly. Although he plans to come here to hang out for a year and has a dispensable attitude towards socializing with his classmates, since the women have spoken, he still has to give him some face. What's more, the woman is here to help him integrate into the class, and he can't do such a thing as scorning others. Standing on the podium, Chu Ming took in all the looks and expressions of the students below. Some students focused their eyes on him, as if expecting him to speak. Most of the students looked indifferent. Chu Ming didn't intend to make any wonderful speech, he just summoned Jai and said a few words briefly. "My name is Chu Ming, and this is my card Jai, a dark gray knight." As soon as these words came out, there was a moment of silence under the podium, and then there was a commotion, and the students turned their attention to Jai. Looking at the curious eyes in the audience, Jai had never seen such a scene after so many years of fighting and killing, and he immediately blushed. In order not to embarrass Chu Ming, he tried to calm down and showed a cold expression. "So handsome, so cold. He is my favorite knight. Dark gray quality, so strong." There were exclamations under the podium one after another. Jai's strength is considered to be above average in this class where the average card quality is only gray, so he can naturally arouse the surprise of these young men and women. Hearing their compliments, Jai almost couldn't hold back his laughter, but Chu Ming finally poked him to make him hold it back. After the introduction, Chu Ming took Jai to find a seat by the wall and sit down. Not long after, a melodious bell rang. Ding ding ding. "Dear students, it's time for get out of class to end, free time." After saying that, the woman left the classroom. "Jai, let's go and eat." Jai nodded, straightened his back, and was about to follow Chu Ming out of the classroom. "Wait a minute, you two." Suddenly, a figure stopped the two of them in front. Chu Ming looked forward and saw a strange knight standing in front of them. Behind him, his card master walked slowly and unhurriedly, leaning on the table as if watching a show. "What you up to?" Jai asked in a deep voice, standing in front of Chu Ming. The strange knight remained unmoved and stared at Jai closely. "Your name is Jai, right?" Jai was stunned. "Is there any problem? I heard that Dean Andrews' former knight was also named Jai." "It's none of your business, Jai, let's go." Ignoring the knight in front of him, Chu Ming pulled Jai and walked out. The knight refused to give up and stood in front of them again. "Your Excellency, your weak strength has insulted the reputation of Senior Jai. I advise you to change your name." Quote. Chu Ming glanced at him silently. "Which era are you a knight from?" The knight pressed his legs together and straightened his back. "The following is Luther Thor, a student of the 379th class of Niho College in Dark Age 8803, with strong green qualities." "From Niho College." Chu Ming showed an interested look on his face. "How can you be sure that the Gehai knight next to me is not the squire knight who followed Andrew back then?" Luther shook his head, with admiration in his eyes. According to historical records, Dean Andrew fought against trolls on his way to Niho College to study. After 9 deaths, he was almost defeated by the trolls. It was with the help of Senior Jai that he survived the danger. As Dean Andrew's protector, Senior Jai is very powerful and can easily kill trolls. He can even fight against the king of trolls without falling into a disadvantage. How could such a legendary figure have only a mere dark gray quality? Forehead. Chu Ming silently looked back at Jai. Hey. Jai scratched his head and smiled awkwardly. Ahem. Chu Ming turned around and asked Knight Luther, How can you be sure that this historical rumor is true? What if Zhe himself is average in strength? Impossible. Luther waved his hand, his eyes shining with confidence. No one knows better than me. What about me? Chu Ming and Chu Ming looked at each other. Silence was better than sound at this time, and their eyes were full of speechlessness. Although it is a good thing to be praised by others, why does it feel so awkward? Luther put up his hands with a serious look on his face. So how do you think about my suggestion? Suggestion. Chu Ming looked at him doubtfully. That's right, it's a name change suggestion. Quote. Come on, this guy probably has a little problem with his brain. Chu Ming turned to the card master who was leaning on the table watching the show and asked. You are his card master, why don't you leave him alone? The young card master waved his hand and said with a smile, Brother, I really can't control this. But if I encounter the hero I admire being impersonated, I probably won't sit idly by and ignore it. Quote. It's really not a family, don't go into the same house. Chu Ming shook his head, pulled Zhe and walked out, ignoring the knight's shouts. Wait a minute, Knight Gehai, I want to challenge your knight to a showdown. Luther hurriedly chased outside and stood in front of the two of them. If you lose, change your name. Chu Ming paused and looked at Luther. What if you lost? Haha, that's impossible. Luther smiled confidently. If I lose, I will ask my card master to apologize to you. Hey, don't take me with you. Apologize yourself. The young card master shouted dissatisfied and turned to smile sneer at Chu Ming. Chu Ming nodded and agreed. Okay, if you lose, just give me some compensation for lost work time. Loss of work pay. Luther looked at his card master in confusion. The young card master readily agreed and seemed to have enough money. Zhe on the side panicked when he heard Chu Ming agreed to a duel, and quickly whispered in his ear. Master, I can't seem to beat him. Wouldn't it be so embarrassing if I couldn't defeat my own admirers later? Chu Ming patted his shoulder and comforted him. You still have me, don't worry. That's right. Zhe spirit was shaken, and his confidence suddenly rose. His eyes were sharp and he gave Luther a cold look. Since Card Master has agreed, I can no longer hide my weakness. Let's fight if we want. Looking at Zhe breathtaking eyes, Luther's heartbeat inexplicably accelerated and his eyelids twitched. He snorted. I just have enough momentum. You can choose the duel location. Chu Ming pondered for a while and pointed to the playground downstairs. How's it going there? The terrain is open and perfect for a duel. Then come on. There were sparks in their eyes and they were eager to fight. 10 minutes later, several people came to an open space on the playground, and Zhe and Luther confronted each other in the air. It is human nature to join in the fun. The two of them had just taken a fighting stance. When some students saw this scene, their eyes lit up and they gathered around. Hey, look, there's a card duel. Is this time trapped by love, or is there a grudge? Whatever, just watch it if it's fun. In the venue, Luther's card master shouted to Chu Ming. Brother, no matter whether you win or lose today, I want to say sorry to you first. If you lose, you will still be paid for your lost time. Chu Ming looked indifferent. Don't worry, Zhe will win. Zhe moved his ears slightly, straightened his back, and tried hard to keep his face paralyzed. In front of Zhe, Luther took a deep breath, raised his sword over his chest, and his expression became serious. Niho Academy, official Knight Luther, challenges you to a duel. Zhe nodded, raised his sword, and a confident aura spread throughout the venue. Black Snake Town, Squire Knight Zhe accepts the challenge. Everyone's eyes flickered, and they were infected by this confidence. Black Snake Town. Luther's face showed a bit of anger. You even replaced Black Dragon Town, the hometown of Knight Gehai, and you even changed the name. Black Dragon Town. Did I hear that right? Chu Ming plucked his ears in confusion. Where did this kid go to read unreliable unofficial history? He felt like he had nothing left to complain about. What is Black Dragon Town? Zhe looked confused, and the cold expression on his face was almost unbearable. Still pretending, with a bit of anger on his face, Luther rushed over with his sword raised. Zhe was caught off guard, but fortunately his swordsmanship had reached an intermediate level and he instinctively held the sword horizontally in front of his chest, parrying Luther's attack. Then the two began to exchange moves. After a few moves, each took a step back. Jai's strength is at the dark gray level, while Luther's strength is at the green level. There is a huge difference in strength between the two. If it weren't for the superb swordsmanship trained by Chu Mingtai, Jai might have been defeated within a few moves. It would not be like now, where the two exchanged a few moves and evenly separated the distance. But for Luther to be able to cultivate the green quality, he must have practiced the secret technique of the Great Knight. In addition to having a stronger body and longer-lasting physical strength than Jai, he may also understand part of the Great Knight's secrets. Even though the two seem to be equally powerful now, in fact, it's just Luther who is still testing. If he fully displays his strength, Jai may be defeated soon. Chu Ming stood outside the battle venue and nodded in approval of Luther's performance. Although my brain is a bit messed up, my fighting performance is unexpected. Chu Ming nodded in approval of Luther's fighting performance, while Luther on the other side was solemn and already doubting himself. Why is this guy's swordsmanship so good? Is he really hiding his clumsiness? Or, my swordsmanship is too poor. You'll know after you try it. The knight shook his head to get rid of distracting thoughts. His muscles tightened and his eyes became more serious. This guy is going to use his full strength. Jai's heart skipped a beat and he quickly looked back at Chu Ming. Rest assured. Chu Ming gave him an okay gesture. Jai breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Luther again. From now on, relax your mind and let me trance. Chu Ming's voice rang in his mind. Jai was stunned for a moment, slowly closed his eyes, and put down the long sword in his hand, as if he was giving up. Luther was stunned, raised his eyebrows and said, "Are you going to admit defeat?" "Of course not." Jai opened his deep eyes, moved his mouth slightly, and the aura on his body changed drastically. It was just a warm-up, now is the real beginning. You. Luther looked surprised. How did the man in front of him do it? His temperament changed in an instant. Don't be distracted during the battle. While Luther was still thinking wildly, Jai came to him instantly like a ghost. Luther's eyes widened and his pupils vibrated. Before he could catch the man's figure, he was pushed out several meters away by a force. The knight braked with his left leg, stopped, and looked at his chest in confusion. Although he couldn't capture Jai's figure or even make any resistance movement, this power seemed a bit weak. Opposite him, Chu Ming moved his body. Luther felt right. Jai's physical strength was indeed weaker than him who had practiced the Great Knight's secret technique. But Chu Ming had no intention of relying on strength to win. Luther. Chu Ming's eyes were fixed on the young knight, and there seemed to be a strong wind raging in his eyes. Have you ever experienced the power of the Great Knight? Luther looked surprised, alert, and kept backing away. But in the face of mystery, running away is useless. Chu Ming held his right hand empty, as if he was holding an endless gust of wind. Then, he pulled down with his right hand, and the wind from the sky poured down with this movement. The style of a king. On the playground, a strong wind suddenly blew up, stirring up dust and gathering it in the duel venue. The students standing outside grabbed the skirt that was about to be lifted by the wind and narrowed their eyes. Is this the power of a griffin? Luther stood there blankly, the sword in his hand slipping unconsciously. The strong wind was raging down, and Luther was in the middle, his armor crackling from the stones. A powerful pressure came, and the young knight couldn't resist it for a second, and was crushed to the ground with a bang. Luther. Bro, you can stop now, let's admit defeat. The young card master opposite was anxious and tried his best to wave to Chu Ming, who had his eyes closed. Jai, in front of Chu Ming, nodded slightly and opened his right hand. The strong wind subsided and the dust dispersed, revealing the knight lying on the ground in a panic. Hey, are you okay? The young card master hurried forward and prepared to help him up. Card master, wait. Luther raised his head, looking a little strange. Although he was defeated embarrassingly, there was no trace of depression in his eyes. The knight reluctantly stood up, supported his body with his long sword, and limped to the front of Jai. At this time, Chu Ming's consciousness had returned to its original form. Jai came back to his senses and became wary of the knight's approach. Are you not convinced? Just as Jai was guarding against Luther's attack, the knight suddenly knelt down on one knee and looked up at Jai with a red face. "Thank you, Senior Jai, for your teaching." After the words fell, an invisible wind suddenly rose around the knight's body, and the momentum in his body suddenly rose. Is this a breakthrough? There were exclamations from the crowd, and people suddenly looked envious and jealous. Holy shit, great night, this is a great night. I'm so jealous, why is it not my card that breaks through? It hurts too much. The development of the matter seemed to be different from what Jai thought. He was confused and didn't know how to deal with it for a moment, so he looked at Chu Ming with pleading eyes. Chu Ming nodded slightly and said to Luther, "Now that you understand Jai's intention, why don't you get up quickly?" Jai coughed lightly and held the knight's hands. "It's just a small thing. Thank you, Senior Jai." Luther was emotional and his eyes were filled with admiration. "Senior Jai, it seems that my understanding of history is very wrong. I wonder if you can explain it to me." Yes. Before Jai finished speaking, he was pulled aside by the excited Luther to chat. Chu Ming stood there, looking at Jai's back, and smiled. In fact, he didn't care whether Jai's identity was exposed. He originally filled in Jai's relevant information in the card information registration process for certified card masters. Cards like these that originally existed in reality will have new memories as their memories change as the future of the other world changes. If the official wants to find Jai and get to know Andrew through him, they only need to find Jai's information in the registered card information database and contact Chu Ming. Moreover, Chu Ming does not object to the Alliance sending people to visit him. If he can cooperate with the official input of historical information, he can also receive a generous reward. As for whether his identity as Andrew Card Master will be exposed, there is no need to worry. Generally speaking, the probability of the card that a card master resonates with using the resonance ritual depends on the card master's personality, talent, experience and other personal factors. For this reason, a card master who can resonate with a loyal partner like the Knight is generally loyal in character. There is a high probability that he cannot resonate with a heroic figure like Andrew who breaks the limitations of the times and stirs up the world. Therefore, even if Chu Ming admitted to the Card Master Alliance that he was Andrew's card master, their first reaction would not be happiness but suspicion. After the duel ended, the students who were watching stayed for a long time. Each one of them stared at Jai with longing eyes and refused to leave. "Brother, thank you so much." Luther's card master came over and held Chu Ming's hand gratefully. Chu Ming smiled calmly and said, "It's just a little effort." To be honest, he didn't expect Luther to be able to break through to the Great Knight. I have to say that although this guy's character is too paranoid, he really has no talent for knights. It seems that Niho Academy did not recruit the wrong person. After chatting with the young card master for a few words, after he left, the balance of Alliance coins displayed on Chu Ming's mobile phone increased from 10,000 to 160,000. "It's really Brother Fu." Chu Ming sighed. These young card masters who can enter the card master class are either lucky and can get useful cards with just one resonance, or you are rich enough to drain the card pool through the money ability. If you resonate more times, you will naturally be able to resonate out useful cards. And Luther's card master is obviously the latter. In order to thank Chu Ming, the young card master gave him all his pocket money of 150,000 yuan for a whole month. Chu Ming was naturally not polite and accepted them all. If he ran out of pocket money, he could still ask for it, but if Chu Ming had no money, then he really had no money, he was extremely poor. 5 days later, inside the cabin bedroom, Chu Ming sat cross-legged on the bed and closed his eyes tightly. After an unknown amount of time passed, he opened his eyes and exhaled. It still doesn't work. In the past few days, he has not been idle. During the day, I spent time in class, collecting relevant information about the history of other worlds, and at night, I went back to the hut and tried to practice the secret techniques of other worlds. But unfortunately, no matter how hard he practiced, his body did not change at all. If he had to talk about changes, the only change he could feel was the soreness in his legs after sitting cross-legged for a long time. Is it really because there are no rules for extraordinary power in reality? Chu Ming frowned and thought for a long time. According to research, there is no difference in body structure between blue star humans and humans from other worlds, and nothing related to extraordinary power can be found in the card characters. But the amazing thing is that those cultivation secrets circulated in other worlds cannot be used by blue star humans. Therefore, people can only attribute the reason to the different environment, and the real world does not have rules of extraordinary power. As for why the cards that came to Blue Star can still exert magical abilities, the card master can only attribute the reason to the mysterious ancient tree of time. Forget it, since we can't figure out the reason, we can only give up temporarily. Chu Ming relaxed his brows, opened his phone, and read the messages. Shuexia's class teacher. Student Chu Ming, the Dark Research Institute is very interested in your cards. They are planning to invite you to participate in an exclusive interview tomorrow. This is a rare opportunity, so seize it. After reading it, there was no surprise on his face. Is it finally here? Card interviews are usually led by the Dark Research Institute and jointly organized with the Card Masters affiliated organizations, and are mainly interviews in the form of audio and video. Chu Ming is still a high school student, and his affiliation belongs to the number 3 middle school. As a matter of course, the school should assist the historical research specialist from the Dark Research Institute to contact the parties involved and meet the interview needs. In fact, the school does not reject this kind of exclusive interview, but rather welcomes it. After all, the cards of the card masters who can be invited by the Dark Research Institute for exclusive interviews are either famous figures in history, or they are special figures who are helpful in studying history. As a follower of Knight Andrew, Zhehai can naturally be counted as a special existence. The content of this interview involves the legendary Knight Andrew who has been rumored in recent days. No matter what the result is, being interviewed means becoming famous, which is a good thing for Chu Ming and the school. The next day, after morning class, Chu Ming came to a conference room in the teaching building at the agreed time. At this time, his class teacher Du Shuexia and Wu Qingfeng had been waiting for a long time, and there were many staff inside adjusting equipment such as cameras. As soon as Chu Ming entered the door, he saw a look of surprise on Wu Qingfeng's face, which looked like an uncle. "Old Wu, why are you here?" When Wu Qingfeng heard Chu Ming's voice, he stopped talking and walked over with a smile. "I'll come over and take a look. You're such a promising kid, you actually got an interview." Wu Qingfeng patted his shoulder with emotion on his face. "I thought you were registering just an ordinary card, but I didn't expect it to be so big. It's actually a Knight Squire of the legendary Knight Andrew. It's really amazing." "Haha, it's just good luck." Chu Ming chuckled. This was just Zhehai, so Wu Qingfeng was so surprised. If he suddenly took out Andrew's card, his jaw would be shocked. "By the way, Lao Wu, do you know what the content of today's interview is?" "I haven't prepared it yet." "Hey, it's okay, it's just you asking me questions, and the person being interviewed is your card, so there's no point in worrying about it." Wu Qingfeng waved his hand and immediately showed a thoughtful expression. "But if you ask me, the focus of the historical researchers' questions should be around the legendary Knight Andrew. After all, this young knight is the core of promoting changes in the history of this world. He changed the future of the other world, caused changes in the ancient trees of time, and achieved a successful intervention that we have not achieved in hundreds of years. If we can gain something from the experience related to Andrew, it will be a very valuable asset for mankind." "I see." Chu Ming nodded absently. It is a pity that the Card Master Alliance's traditional method of interfering with cards and thus disturbing history is from the outside to the inside. Not only is it inefficient, but even the experimental results cannot be guaranteed. Chu Ming's use of time history books to rewrite history is a direct reference to history itself. After personal experience, he can make history move in the direction he desires. The essential difference between these two methods makes the Dark Research Institute's idea of extracting useful information from Zhehai doomed to be in vain. But who cares? What Chu Ming cares more about is the remuneration after the interview. After all, it was an exclusive interview by the Dark Research Institute, and the remuneration should not be low. Maybe the school would pour more resources into him because of this exclusive interview. On the premise of not exposing them, the more resources the better. Even if he doesn't use them, they can still be used for trading. If you want to start the next writing, you need a new historical carrier, preferably cards that are approaching the era of world destruction. To meet these conditions, you naturally need to use the resonance ritual to obtain new cards. The lowest specification resonance ceremony priced by the Card Master Alliance requires 500,000 Alliance coins, and those resonance rituals built privately by individuals in the black market are estimated to cost even more, and will be much more expensive than the standard price. Chu Ming's eyes flashed with distress. Just this resonance ceremony can cause him to bleed profusely. We can only see if this interview can restore his blood in advance. Chu Ming and Wu Qingfeng waited in the conference room for a while. The principal and history researcher of No. 3 Middle School hurried in with a group of assistants. Sorry everyone, I'm a little late because of too many business matters. The middle-aged history researcher wearing glasses bent slightly and apologized to everyone in the meeting. Then, his eyes searched around and settled on Chu Ming. This is classmate Chu Ming. Hello. My name is Li Dongqiu, and I am a history research specialist from the Dark Research Institute. Hello Mr. Li. Chu Ming shook hands with the man politely, and then shook hands with the smiling principal. Li Dongqiu glanced at his watch with expectant eyes and made a gesture of invitation to Chu Ming. Classmate Chu Ming, I won't talk nonsense. The interview is almost ready to begin. Can you let me confirm the cards? Chu Ming nodded, and under everyone's gaze, he inserted Jie Hai's card into the card reading instrument that the staff had prepared. A faint light flashed, and Jie Hai's message appeared on the electronic screen. Servant Knight Jie Hai. Quality: Dark Gray. Race: Human race. Skills: Life Strengthening Intermediate, Sword Mastery Intermediate. Li Chudong adjusted his glasses and carefully checked the information displayed on them. Then he raised his head, his tone unknowingly filled with excitement. It's really Senior Jie Hai, the loyal knight who has followed the legendary knight Andrew for many years. The reason why Li Chudong is so excited is because for the Dark Research Institute, it is great news to be able to discover the existence of Jie Hai and find the card master who holds him. When it comes to who has the closest relationship with Andrew in history, most people would definitely think it was Andrew's father Harold, or his mentor Lawrence. But after their research, they found that the person who knew Andrew best was the knight Jie Hai who had been with him for many years. This Jie Hai knight and Andrew had known each other since early in Black Snake Town, and then followed Andrew north to study in the capital, and experienced the entire process of the bloody massacre in the capital. Later, Andrew became Dean Niho and served for decades. If you want to understand Andrew, Jie Hai, the squire knight who has experienced all stages of Andrew's life, is the best candidate. Sorry, I lost my temper. Li Chudong opened his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Classmate Chu Ming, please ask Senior Jie Hai to come out now. After the words fell, everyone's scorching eyes focused on Chu Ming, with expectant looks on their faces. Chu Ming nodded, took a deep breath, and threw out the card. A burst of golden light emerged, and Jie Hai took a step forward, revealing a resolute and cold face. Feeling the momentum coming from Jie Hai, everyone was slightly startled. Is this the demeanor of Senior Jie Hai? He is indeed a legend. After seeing Jie Hai's appearance, everyone began to think about it, and the indifferent expression of the young knight in the live broadcast emerged in their minds. Yes, that's the smell. Li Chudong was excited, and he was even more certain that the interview would be fruitful. Senior Jie Hai, hello, I am Li Chudong, a historical researcher from the Dark Research Institute. Well, hello, I am Knight Jie Hai. Jie Hai's expression did not change and he just shook hands with the man. The man didn't care about Jie Hai's indifferent attitude, but he felt even happier. Senior Jie Hai, I will ask you some questions next, please don't mind. Jie Hai looked at Chu Ming next to him, turned around and said. Don't worry, the card master has already explained the situation to me. I will try my best to cooperate with you, but I also hope that my card master can get corresponding compensation. Li Chudong hurriedly said, this is natural. Our Dark Research Institute will never treat Chu Ming badly in this regard. That's right, the principal on the side said. The school has also added Chu Ming to the seed candidates of the Card Master Star Project, and will provide more resources. After hearing what the two said, Jie Hai's expression softened and he agreed to the researcher's request. Li Chudong and others were overjoyed when they saw this, and quickly led Chu Ming and Jie Hai to the middle of many photographic equipment. Ahem. The man cleared his throat, sat upright, and opened his notepad. Here, he is about to record a very significant interview. Senior Zhe, what is the most legendary experience in your life? Countless thoughts flashed through Zhe's mind, recalling the past that could still make him excited even after many years. His emotions were suddenly aroused, and he forgot to maintain an indifferent expression for a while, and sighed. The first half of my life was mediocre. If it weren't for Master Andrew, I might have spent my whole life mediocre in Black Snake Town. When I was still in Black Snake Town, Zhe couldn't stop talking as soon as he started talking, and the aloof persona he maintained just now collapsed instantly. Fortunately, Li Chudong and others were already immersed in the legendary experience described by Zhe, and they did not notice this small detail. After a while, when Zhe finished speaking, Li Chudong stopped the notes in his hand with a look of confusion on his face and sighed. What a legendary life! It should be natural for such a character to break through the limitations of the times. The man thought about it for a while, got over the shock, and displayed his professional qualities. Excuse me, have you noticed any significant changes in Senior Andrew before and after he became a knight? Zhe's expression did not change. Chu Ming had already rehearsed this question with him. He was confident and answered fluently. There are indeed some changes. Before Master Andrew became a knight, he had a lazy personality and could not endure hardship. But after becoming a knight, I became diligent and studious, and became full of enthusiasm for the way of knighthood. Hearing this, Li Chudong's eyes flashed with joy and he kept taking notes in his hand. Very good. This interview really came at the right time. Sure enough, just as the big guys in the institute guessed, Andrew becoming a knight was a keynote in history. In other words, they only need to concentrate on studying the changes that took place in Andrew before and after he became a knight in Black Snake Town, and they will be able to summarize the rules and find the correct way to disturb the history of the other world. The interview lasted for an hour, during which Li Chudong asked various tricky questions. Professional as expected, even Chu Ming had to think for a while before answering some of the questions he asked. Fortunately, Chu Ming had the final right to explain. Even if he let Zhe talk nonsense, it would be difficult for the other party to notice the abnormality. After the interview ended and the cameras and other equipment were turned off, Chu Ming breathed a sigh of relief. Although the questions in this interview are not too difficult to answer, this is the first time he has faced the camera for such a long time, and his waist is a little stiff. Next to him, Li Chudong carefully put away his notepad and walked up to Chu Ming with a grateful look on his face. Thank you to Senior Zhe and classmate Chu Ming for their cooperation. The historical information you provided has been of great help to us in sorting out the history and research of other worlds. As a thank you, please accept this, classmate Chu Ming. The man called an assistant to the side and carefully brought over a pitch-black leather bag with a silver ancient tree logo. Chu Ming was stunned, took the bag, and said in surprise, "Is this a card bag?" Yes, there are 5 blue quality magic crystal cards and 1 green quality magic card that can be used for personal protection. These are the rewards for this interview. Blue quality magic crystal card. Chu Ming's face was filled with surprise. He looked through the card package in his hand, and a flash of purple light leaked out from inside. Magic crystal card. A man-made card. Because the card surface is as magnificent as a purple gem, it is called a magic crystal card. Although magic crystal cards do not have any special abilities, they are widely circulated in the market and have become hard currency because of their difficult-to-imitate properties. A white quality magic crystal card is worth 100 alliance coins. A gray quality magic crystal card is worth 1,000 alliance coins. By analogy, a blue quality magic crystal card is worth about 100,000 alliance coins. In other words, just for this exclusive interview, the Big Boss Dark Research Institute paid him 500,000 alliance coins and a rare protective magic card. Happiness came so suddenly, Chu Ming's head became a little dizzy. Li Chudong continued, "This is the intention of our research institute. I hope classmate Chu Ming and Senior Zhe don't mind." Chu Ming came back to his senses, the smile on his face became brighter, and he held the man's hand tightly. "You're so polite. If you have any missions next time, remember to contact me. I will do my best to cooperate." Li Chudong was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Classmate Chu Ming, to be honest, many seniors in the institute are very optimistic about you. After you graduate, you can consider our Dark Research Institute. After the two exchanged a few polite words, Li Chudong had to rush back to the office to sort out the information. He and his assistants hurriedly left the conference room with a lot of precious information. After Chu Ming watched Li Chudong leave, he looked at the dark card package in his hand. In fact, it stands to reason that no matter how wealthy the Dark Research Institute is, there will be strict internal fund management, and every use of funds needs to be reviewed, so the remuneration for an exclusive interview will never be so high. Unless the researchers at the Dark Research Institute are really optimistic about him. Chu Ming thought about it and felt that they might have taken a fancy to his character. After all, the character of a person who could resonate with Zhe Hai's loyalty character card would not be that bad. And Zhe Hai is not an ordinary squire knight. He has seen countless big scenes, witnessed the end of an era and the beginning of a new era. This kind of card generally has a low vision and is unlikely to be resonated by mediocre people. Although the Dark Research Institute didn't know that Chu Ming was Andrew's card master, it managed to recruit the right person. I can only say that it really deserves to be a Dark Research Institute. The layout is too big. After sighing, Chu Ming put away his card bag, and the principal, Wu Qingfeng and others walked away. Classmate Chu Ming, you have brought glory to the school this time. The principal happily patted Chu Ming on the shoulder. The principal is welcome. Ha ha ha. In this pleasant atmosphere, Chu Ming accepted several card materials handed over by the principal. These card materials are of great quality, not high quality, and their combined value should be less than 10,000. However, this is all about slow progress. The Card Master Star program jointly implemented by major middle schools will provide free card material shares to student card masters who join it every month. They only need to collect it on time. The seed candidates for a plan like Chu Ming will naturally have a higher share than other card masters. If he does not consider the issue of using the card materials himself, he will not have to worry about his life just by receiving card materials and trading materials. Saying goodbye to everyone, Chu Ming rushed towards the classroom. Zhe Hai led the way, and he followed behind, thinking and planning a trip to the black market. His original idea was to sell most of the unused cards on the black market, try to raise 500,000 to 600,000, and try to resonate with the cards of the new era. What he didn't expect was that the Dark Research Institute was so wealthy that it directly gave him 5 blue magic crystal cards and a valuable protective magic card. The 5 magic crystal cards cost exactly 500,000 yuan. Isn't this just to get Chu Ming the funds needed for the resonance ceremony? Chu Ming opened the card pack, glanced at the 5 magic crystal cards inside, and pulled out the protective magic card. Type 4 Mental Shield. Quality: Dark Green. Skill: Damage Resistance. After activation, it can automatically resist a full blow from a dark green quality card. Being able to automatically defend is really awesome. I have to say that although this group of card masters engaged in scientific research may seem a bit rough at ordinary times, they are actually quite gentle and attentive. Protective cards like this usually have a price but no market. Even if the dark green quality cards are sold at a blue quality price, it is not surprising. And this card also has noble automatic defense. Even if he encounters danger lurking in the dark, his mental shield can save his life. Chu Ming said that he would not sell it, and it would be very useful for himself. Returning to his seat, he stroked the black leather silver tree card bag in his hand and put the other cards into it. This card holder seems to be quite durable. The one sent by the Dark Research Institute is definitely not much different anyway. From now on, this will be his special card holder. Holding the card in his belt, a sense of rich peace of mind came to him. I'll go check out the black market in a few days. Maybe with my current capital, I can buy a higher standard resonance ceremony. Saturday. Taking advantage of the holiday, Chu Ming rode the e-donkey he just bought to a small black market in his urban area. But the embarrassing point is that although the black market in this world is secretly controlled by various mixed forces, it sounds mysterious and hidden, but in fact there is also the shadow of the Card Master Alliance in it. It is also with the tacit approval of the Card Master Alliance that the Card Master can maintain a certain degree of privacy and freedom in the city. This is also the reason why Chu Ming does not dare to sell the Griffin secret technique in the black market. If the officials are determined to investigate thoroughly in the black market, they will definitely be able to find out his identity. Half an hour later, Chu Ming drove the e-donkey into a dilapidated urban village. The speed of the car slowed down, and he parked near an ordinary farmer's market. After summoning Jai Hai, the two of them bought masks of Sun Monkey and Zhu Baji from a popular clothing store nearby, put them on, and then put on their cloaks. After a while, a rosy-cheeked man in a monkey head cloak walked out of the clothing store, and Jai Hai, who was carrying a fat head and pig ears, turned into a small alley. The deeper you go, the more card masters there are wearing all kinds of weird masks. When he entered the underground black market, a lively scene like a meeting of monsters and monsters came into his eyes. The underground space of the entire black market is very large, but the light is not very good. Chu Ming stood in the passage and looked into the distance, and basically could only see a piece of darkness. Monkey and pig, 100 each. The two of them looked at the passage for a while. The guards guarding the doors on both sides became impatient and reached out to ask for the admission fee. After stuffing 2 alliance coins into the two of them, Chu Ming and the others finally entered. Jai Hai looked around curiously for a few times, then turned his head and asked Chu Ming, "Master, where are we going now?" Chu Ming touched the black pickup bag under his cloak. "Let's first find a store that recycles card materials and dispose of the excess card materials." After saying that, he walked around, wandering around as if he were visiting a vegetable market. After wandering around for a while, he suddenly stopped in front of a stall with no customers, and picked up a black card called Corpse Bat Wing Membrane with interest. "Boss, how do you sell this?" The boss wearing a tiger mask said nothing and silently stretched out 5 fingers. 500. Wrong, it's 50,000. Can this crap thing be sold for 50,000? Chu Ming's tone was a bit surprised, but a black card that couldn't be used was sold so expensively. "My black card dropped from the green quality corpse bat. It is an excellent material for constructing resonance rituals. If you like it, buy it or not. If you don't, you will lose it." "Is this so?" Chu Ming stood up thoughtfully. The construction of a resonance ritual requires not only normal card materials, but also black card materials as a primer. Therefore, some black cards are scraps, while others are valuable. The difference lies in whether they can be used as materials for building resonance rituals. He had previously killed so many trolls in front of the Alliance building and gained a lot of black card materials, but unfortunately, as the trolls disappeared completely, those black cards also disappeared. You must know that there are also many materials suitable for use as resonance ritual materials. Thinking of this, Chu Ming's mouth twitched, and his heart ached. Leaving the stall, Chu Ming walked towards a shabby-looking material recycling shop on the central street. This store is called Kai Minka Store, and it has always been run by a female owner. It has always had a good reputation in the black market, and it is also Chu Ming's goal at this time. When I opened the store door, a bell rang above my head. Chu Ming glanced inside curiously. The interior of the store is covered with wooden boards, and the overall tone is dark brown. Opposite the brown counter are 2 rows of bookshelves close to the wall. There are piles of old books below that cannot be accommodated. There is also a dry crucible in the middle of these piles of books. There was a little bit of color on his face. This shop doesn't look like a card shop, but rather like a wizard's cabin or a magic item store. After looking around in the store for a while, Chu Ming didn't wait for the boss to come, but instead heard a sudden quarrel upstairs. A grumpy male voice came. "I don't want this card anymore. Please refund me the money quickly." Immediately afterwards, a patient female voice sounded, "Guest, I am only responsible for helping you build a resonance ritual. I cannot decide what kind of cards you resonate with. I don't care, you must be playing some trick. Get your money back." The two were quarreling upstairs. One was making trouble unreasonably, and the other was patiently explaining. Chu Ming leaned against the counter, opened his sleeves and glanced at his watch. He was not in a hurry and had no intention of going up to break up the fight. Chu Ming waited leisurely below for a few minutes, and the quarrel between the two had not stopped. Just when he thought the quarrel would continue like this for a long time, roars and hysterical cries of men suddenly came from the wooden ladder. Something doesn't seem right. Chu Ming frowned, pulled out Griffin's secret technique and Black Snake longsword from the card pack, and placed Wild Hunt Knight Andrew close to his chest. "Jai Hai, let's go up and take a look. You'll protect me from the front." Chu Ming glanced at Jai Hai beside him. The man was in a daze, as if he had returned to those days of adventure with Chu Ming. It's just that this time Chu Ming protected him instead of him protecting Chu Ming. Don't worry, master. Zhe Hai looked calm and walked quickly upstairs to the room where the sound came from. The man's frightened cries became louder and louder, and the sound of objects being smashed and the sound of a woman's fighting breathing came from the room. I just want to cry. You scolded me just now. Chu Ming paused, and he felt a strong dark aura shrouding him like a shadow. Zhe Hai, be careful. A strange dark purple tentacle suddenly broke through the wall and headed straight towards the two of them. Dark creature. Chu Ming's face was gloomy, and he squeezed the two cards in his hand. The secret technique of the griffin returned to his body, and an aura close to the green quality level appeared from his body. Maintaining the secret technique requires mental energy. Chu Ming did not hesitate, immediately grabbed the incoming tentacle, and then pulled it out. This weaker dark creature could not resist this force and was dragged out of the wall. Roar! A monster with an extremely large, flat head and a lower jaw covered with tentacles that looked like a human and an octopus appeared in front of him. The monster fell to the ground, and before he could crawl out, Chu Ming grabbed his neck. Ah! Cough! The monster struggled hard, and the tentacles on its lower jaw tried to cling to him. Chu Ming looked at the disgusting twisting tentacles, frowned, and squeezed them hard with his right hand. Only a bang sound was heard. The monster couldn't bear the pressure and burst. Putting down the monster's body, Chu Ming looked into the room. The man who had been shouting before had fainted in the corner from fright. The woman also exhausted her mental energy from using cards to fight dark creatures, and fell to the ground gasping for breath. Chu Ming fixed his gaze on the woman and asked, "What happened?" The shop owner's wife gasped, shook her hand, and then pointed in the direction of the corpse of the dark creature. He looked back and saw a card condensed where the monster's corpse had been. With doubts, Chu Ming picked up the card. This is... Chu Ming's eyes suddenly shrank, as if he saw some incredible scene. Hybrid strange octopus. Quality: gray. Race: mixed race. Skill: shadow whip. Why isn't this card a black card? Chu Ming took a deep look at the card in his hand, and then looked at the proprietress with doubts. Don't look at me, I don't know either. The woman stood up with difficulty, holding her chest, and pointed at the fainted man. This card was resonated by this guy from the resonance ritual, but I don't know why it happened. So that's what he was arguing with you about just now. The woman was stunned and nodded. After learning the answer, Chu Ming stared at the strange card in his hand and fell into deep thought. There must have been some changes that he didn't know about in the future era, which led to the emergence of this kind of dark creature card that can be recognized by the ancient trees of time. Could it be? Looking at the word hybrid on the card information, an idea suddenly came to his mind. That's right, after I broke the bloodline shackles on humans from other worlds, while gaining the qualification to explore the depths of the bloodline, I also lost the isolation of the power of gods, making the bloodline more susceptible to contamination. That's why this hybrid creature was born. After thinking about this, Chu Ming couldn't help but smile bitterly. Blessings and misfortunes depend on each other. It turns out that the gift of fate has been marked with a price in secret. Although it is still unknown what kind of impact the birth of this hybrid creature will have on the other world, judging from the completely irrational appearance of the card just now, it is probably not optimistic. After standing there and thinking for a while, a woman's voice suddenly brought him back to reality. Are you here to buy a card? The proprietress threw the fainted man out of the store and came up with a broom. Chu Ming nodded subconsciously, then shook his head. We need to get some materials and build a resonance ritual. The landlady put down her broom, shook her head, and tied up her long hair. Originally, I wasn't in the mood to open the door anymore when this happened, but since you saved me just now, I still have to help. But please wait and clean up first. Chu Ming was stunned for a moment and asked, what should I do with that man just now? Is he just left outside the door like this? The woman spread her hands, changed her patient image, and cursed, today is also unlucky. If you encounter such an idiot, it would be nice not to throw him into the trash can. Don't worry, disputes like this are still very common in the black market. Several cases occur almost every day. At most, some gangsters will come over to inquire about the situation. It will not hinder my work. As for that card, it's not my concern. Chu Ming nodded, waited patiently for the woman to finish cleaning, and then followed her to the counter. What kind of goods do you have? Show me what you have. The price is absolutely fair. Opening the card pack, Chu Ming took out a few cards that needed to be sold. The woman wore white gloves and carefully picked up the cards placed on the counter one by one. She muttered something in her mouth and commented, Universal Night Secret Technique, a great quality card. The quality is so-so, but because it is a secret technique, the market price is about 10,000. Jet black spider leg comes from the human-faced spider, a dark creature with green strength. It is a relatively inferior resonance ritual introduction that can sell for up to 5,000. Quote. Violent Bear Secret Technique, a dark green quality great night secret technique. A flash of surprise flashed in the eyes of the landlady, and she raised her head and asked Chu Ming, the card of the Great Knight's secret technique is rare, and its skills are extremely practical. It can be sold for 350,000 at least. Are you sure you want to take action? Chu Ming nodded without any hesitation. In terms of secret techniques, he already has the Griffin secret technique for self-defense. The Bear secret technique is useless in his hands, so he might as well sell it. Seeing that Chu Ming was so determined, the woman stopped trying to dissuade him and took out her calculator to do some calculations. A total of about 480,000 yuan. Counting your 500,000 yuan, you can use it as a thank you for saving me just now. How should the resonance ceremony be calculated? The woman stretched out her slender fingers and gestured. The lowest specification D-level resonance ceremony is 650,000, and the C-level resonance ceremony is 1.2 million. What about C-level and above? The woman shrugged. That's not an area that my level can cover. But I can give you the official standard price for these rituals. 50,000 for D-level and 1 million for C-level. Chu Ming hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth, and pulled out 5 blue-quality magic crystal cards from the card pack. C-level, I want a big one. Chapter 51. Okay. The landlady smiled with narrowed eyes and led Chu and Ming upstairs. Returning to the dilapidated room, the woman rummaged around on the wall cabinet for a while, then placed a pile of card materials in the middle of the floor. The construction of the resonance ceremony takes about half an hour. It takes a bit long. You can go out for a while first. Chu Ming shook his head and looked at the pile of card materials in the middle of the floor. No, I'm just curious about how a bunch of card materials create a resonance ritual. Whatever. The woman spread her hands indifferently, then sat cross-legged on the ground, making various cards into physical objects. She heated the crucible, then put various ingredients into it in a certain proportion and in order. After a while, a pot of strange black liquid was boiled in the crucible. Is this a resonance ritual? How come it looks so much like a witch refining a potion? Chu Ming had a strange look on his face. He couldn't figure out how the resonance ritual, which ended up as a golden transparent card, could be made with a pot of potion. However, in order not to disturb the landlady's work, he did not ask. He continued to look at the woman, who was preparing the potion with a serious look on her face. After a while, she grabbed an obsidian dagger and threw it into the crucible. Under Chu Ming's surprised gaze, the dagger melted into liquid and merged into the pot of black liquid. The entire refining process lasted for half an hour. During this period, the woman threw many strange materials such as boots and nails into the crucible. The entire refining process seemed very random. Just when Chu Ming was doubting whether the potion would be effective, the woman stopped working and wiped her sweat. Okay, there's still one last step left, shuffling the cards. As she spoke, she carefully picked up a jade box from the cabinet and took out a pitch-black card. This is the fog veil film dropped by the purple dark creature Night Ghost. It is worth more than 700,000 yuan. It is the best introduction to constructing a C-level resonance ritual. I spent a lot of money this time. A look of pain flashed across the woman's face. She grabbed the black card with pliers and sank it into the bubbling black liquid. The next second, the place where the card and the liquid in the crucible came into contact sizzled, and a large amount of black smoke floated out. What a disgusting smell. Chu Ming looked at the black smoke and frowned. Then he looked down and saw the woman slowly taking out the card. Suddenly a golden light bloomed from the liquid, and the original black card turned golden and transparent, shining with light. Is this a sea-level resonance ceremony? Chu Ming took the golden card, surprise flashed in his eyes. Just by refining the potion, the black card turned golden yellow, and all the dark power on it was removed. The landlady nodded and said, "Yes, this card has washed away all the information, leaving only the power of the ancient tree of time. It can become a bridge between you and the ancient tree of time, allowing you to obtain new cards on the ancient tree of time. Card. Now that it's active, use it before the effect wears off." "Okay, thank you, boss lady." Chu Ming took a deep breath, grabbed the golden card, and spread his thoughts inside. Bang! A soft sound echoed in his mind, and Chu Ming felt as if his spirit had broken through the limitations of his body and continued to float high into the sky. Until he could see the complete picture of the ancient tree in the sky, an inexplicable connection was established between him and the ancient tree. Suddenly, in his eyes, the ancient tree glowed brightly, and countless cards flowed through the sky like a long river. Chu Ming's mind moved, and he felt that there seemed to be cards in the river that resonated with him. He looked back, and felt a heavy sense of history. Harold, Storm Bear Night Todd, Nina, and countless other cards from the Troll era were shining like stars in the sky, seeming to be waiting. Looking at him. But Chu Ming's goal is not them. He wants to go to the future era to find cards that resonate with him. Goodbye, everyone. Turning his head, he swam along the time towards the end of the long river. His body and mind became more and more relaxed, and the weight of history gradually disappeared. When he came to the end of the long river, Chu Ming looked back. The long river was dim, with only stars shining in it. "Wish me a golden fortune." Chu Ming muttered a prayer silently and plunged directly into the long river. In Kai Minka's store, Chu Ming returned to consciousness, stood up in a daze, and then looked through the wooden boards and reinforced concrete in the direction of the ancient tree. "I saw a golden light falling from the ancient tree with flames, passing through the steel forest, passing through the land, falling into the hut, and stopping in front of him. Show me what it is." Chu Ming looked expectantly and grabbed the card into his hand. The golden light above dissipated, revealing the appearance of the card. Vampire boy. Quality: gray. Race: mixed race. Skill: bloodthirsty. In the card, a fair-skinned feminine boy is squatting in a cage. He is covered in scars, and the two small fangs in his mouth show his unusual identity. "This kind of card again." The landlady looked surprised and muttered, "It seems that business will not be easy in the future." Chu Ming stroked the smooth card and nodded. "It's not bad, it's still within the range I can accept. As long as the card is not a black card, it will be a bloody profit for him. It's just a pity that the characters produced this time don't seem to fit well with the way of chivalry. A hybrid dark creature and a vampire, it doesn't look like it has any muscles at all." After playing with the card for a while, he put it back into the card pack. "I'm quite satisfied with this card. Now that the cards have been released, it's time for us to leave. I'll see you next time I have business," the landlady said cheerfully. "It's best if customers like you come here every day. By the way, what's your name, boss lady? Isn't it written on the door of the store?" Kai Ming's card shop. Chu Ming thought about it for a moment. Kai Ming, a good name. 1 month later. In the bedroom, Chu Ming placed the organized information on the table, leaned back, and rubbed his eyes tiredly. The general historical context of the new era has been sorted out, and it's time to prepare to start writing. After returning from the black market, in order to understand the history of the new era, Chu Ming spent a lot of time sorting out official interview materials and some analysis and research published by netizens. The entire process of a card interview takes at least half an hour to an hour. It was impossible for him to read all the interviews, but he only selected some of the more important interviews with historical figures. Even so, Chu Ming spent nearly 20 days watching the selected interview videos. In the remaining days, he sorted out the historical data, sorted out the historical context, and summarized some important information. Among them, what he wanted to know most was how strong the tide of darkness had reached in 15005 of the Dark Age, and why even the human knights who were able to break the bloodline restrictions and possess greater power could not prevent darkness from flooding the world. You don't know if you don't check. Chu Ming was immediately frightened by this check. According to a knight who survived to the end, in Dark Age 15005, the year the world was engulfed by darkness. Under the fierce attack of dark creatures, all human countries have long since perished. The human knights use Niho Academy and major city-states as the last survival places of human civilization to resist the invasion of darkness. But in the end, even those legendary knights who had touched the Deep Blue could not resist the tide of darkness and perished in the darkness. Deep Blue cannot resist the tide of darkness, which means that the tide of darkness has far exceeded the upper limit of the previous dark ages. Has it reached purple? The truth is so suffocating. Chu Ming flipped through the information and took out a page. Pushing the timeline further forward, if you want to understand why the strength of dark creatures can rise so fast and reach the point of crushing human knights, you need to know a concept: demonization. The so-called demonization actually refers to the method by which dark creatures undergo a second darkening process to obtain stronger power. On the same principle as how humans gain strength by exploring the depths of their bloodline, demonization also strengthens the body of darkness by tapping into the power of the dark bloodline. It's just that because of the special nature of dark power, dark creatures can gain more powerful and violent power than humans. Therefore, if he wants to solve this wave of darkness and change the future, he has to face the problem of demonization. The goal of this writing is clear: to help other worlds prevent the dark tide of demonization and obtain more powerful cards. As for what to do specifically, Chu Ming thought for a while, looked through the collected information, and his eyes rested on an organization called Mythical School. According to some knights, this is a school whose goal is to study human blood and explore power. It was also the scholars in this school who discovered the power of demonization, which led to the occurrence of this demonization disaster. If he could deal with this sect before the demonic secrets spread, he might be able to stop it all. Although the goal is clear, it is not easy to achieve it. Chu Ming frowned and took out Vampire Boy from the card pack. Mixed-race humans are not uncommon in the era of demonization, but the human kingdom generally hates and discriminates against mixed races, calling them mudbloods and treating them as humble slaves. It was also because human oppression was too heavy that the hybrids who were squeezed out by humans finally joined the camp of dark creatures, which once caused great trouble to humans in their fight against the tide of darkness. Therefore, with his mixed-race status, if he wanted to investigate the Mythical School in the human kingdom, he would encounter many obstacles and even become enemies of humans. Chu Ming smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't expect that one day I would become an enemy of humans. But whatever, it doesn't matter if it's a white cat or a black cat, as long as it catches mice, it's a good cat." Opening the history book, he turned to the first page. Dark Age 15,005, darkness flooded the world and Intinuit died. After fitting Vampire Boy to the blank space on the left, Chu Ming was ready to welcome the new era. Call. Chu Ming took a deep breath, grabbed the quill and lowered it. Time. Dark Age 14,835. Location. Blackstone Kingdom, Brownstone Mine. Vector. Vampire Boy. Chu Ming gradually regained consciousness, his senses became clearer, and the sound of water droplets and the gentle sound of wind could be heard around him. This is. The boy opened his eyes with difficulty, and just as he was about to raise his hands, a burning pain shot through his body, and he couldn't help but grit his teeth. After a while, when his body became a little numb, Chu Ming was freed from the pain and focused on his surroundings. The first thing that caught his eye was the rusty black iron fence. Only later did he realize that he was locked in a cage. Looking out through the cage, it was pitch black, and I could only vaguely tell that it was a cave. Chu Ming moved his body slightly, and the chains binding him made a sound. His expression suddenly fell into a trance, and a strange memory flooded into his mind. It can be known from his memory that the place he is currently in is called the Brownstone Mine, and his carrier is a mining slave here. The Vampire Boy has no name and was sold here by a slave owner in the Blackstone Kingdom. With his pretty and feminine face, his original destiny should have been to become the plaything of the nobles. It's just that the original person was too manic and not docile enough, so he didn't go there. Chu Ming breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I didn't make it. However, things are not much better in this mine. Not only do they have to be beaten and insulted every day, they also don't have enough to eat, and they also live in damp mines. If the mine collapses one day, he won't have to come out even if he's inside. And for the Vampire Boy who has experienced a miserable life, dying in a mine collapse is even a good ending. At least I don't have to work to death in the mines and be in a panic of hunger every day. Shaking his head, memories continued to come back, and he remembered why he was here. This is because the day before yesterday, the vampire boy had a conflict with other slaves while carrying minerals. After that, he was severely beaten by the overseer and locked up here. For 2 whole days, no one came to visit or bring food, so the boy starved to death inside. It's so miserable. Chu Ming sighed. The starting treatment with Andrew was completely different. Is this how different the world is? In Black Snake Town, Andrew was at least a baron, protected by Harold, and could easily access the ways of knighthood. But when it comes to the vampire boy, he is a lowly slave, and his path to transcendence is unknown. It's a hell of a start. But fortunately I took over, otherwise everyone else would have stared blankly. Chu Ming moved carefully in the cage and tried his best to cross his legs together. During this time, he accidentally moved too much, and when he touched the wound, he grimaced in pain. After posing, Chu Ming began to memorize the knight's secret technique in his heart. He really didn't know how hybrids practiced. However, he has many memories of knight training in his mind, and maybe he can try to practice the secret skills of knights with his hybrid body. As for whether it has any effect, you won't know until you try it. Anyway, there is no other way at the moment, and he doesn't know how long he will stay in this cage. Sitting there waiting to die was not his style. Chu Ming closed his eyes and began to calm down. Soon, the pain gradually subsided and he entered a state of deep meditation. Early morning. When a ray of sunlight entered the mine, Chu Ming opened his eyes. My strength seems to have recovered somewhat, but it's not obvious. The knight's secret technique can be used, but it's not that easy to use. Even Andrew's poor knight talent can cultivate the knight's secret method much faster than this body. And he found that only the universal knight's secret technique had an effect on his body, and the griffin's secret technique had no effect at all. The universal knight's secret technique is indeed passed down from ancient times. The most widely circulated secret technique can even be used by hybrids. Even this efficiency is too low. Chu Ming couldn't help but shook his head. But now I can't get out, and there is no other secret method, so I can only practice this for the time being. He closed his eyes again and entered a meditative state. I don't know how much time passed, but a burst of noise came from far away and came closer. Chu Ming's mind fluctuated, and he opened his eyes and looked outside the cave entrance. I saw 2 humans wearing leather armor walking in, chatting and laughing with their arms around their shoulders. When they saw that Chu Ming was still alive, their faces showed surprise. Oh, this fool didn't starve to death yet. He deserves to work hard all his life, ha ha ha. Bang, bang, bang. The shackles dragged on the ground as Chu Ming followed the 2 supervisors out of the mine. The scorching sun fell, and the ground was scorching hot. His exposed soles felt like they were being burned by coals, and the pain was unbearable. After walking for a while, he was already sweating all over, and the rags on his body were stuck to his back. After following the 2 men for a while, they walked under the sun and reached a mine. One of the supervisors turned around. Boy, if there is a next time, it won't be as simple as 2 days. Go in. If you can't dig enough brownstone for 2 baskets today, don't even think about having food to eat. Chu Ming lowered his head and said nothing, and staggered into the mine. Isolated from the hot light, he was rescued like a traveler who found an oasis in the desert. He leaned against the wall to rest for a while. A mixed-race slave in the mine walked past him carrying a basket on his back. He looked at the slave's back. The basket was filled with a kind of brown stone with a metallic texture. These brown stones are called brownstone, which is also the meaning of the existence of this brownstone mine. Brownstone is generally distributed underground, in rare and scattered quantities. As for what humans are mining them for, Chu Ming is still unclear. The brownstone mines in this brownstone mine are already considered rich ores. A skilled human miner can dig out baskets of brownstones in about a day. As mixed races are generally stronger than ordinary humans, they can barely manage 2 baskets of ore a day, so most mining aristocrats prefer to use mixed-race slaves to mine. However, Chu Ming was now hungry and weak, and his wounds had not fully recovered. It was almost impossible to dig out 2 baskets in one day. No wonder these hybrids have to mix with dark creatures. Humans really don't regard hybrids as human beings. Chu Ming sighed and dragged his weak body inside. It was impossible for him to dig mines for a day. It took a lot of time to practice the secret method, so it was impossible for him to give up. Walking deeper into the mine, a slight cool breeze blew from other exits, and the boy's condition improved a lot. Along the way, in the dark mine, the slaves hunched in and out. On their bodies, Chu Ming saw bat wings, sheep horns, snake scales. They looked as weird as they could be. Their eyes were lifeless, like walking corpses, digging inside with baskets on their backs. Chu Ming looked around for a while, dragging his shackles and walking past several mixed races. When those people saw the boy, they were startled for a moment, then showed fear on their faces. They were so frightened that they dropped their tools on the ground and huddled in the corner. Chu Ming rubbed his nose. It seems that my reputation is still very loud here. The reason why these people were so afraid of him was because the day before yesterday, when he had a conflict with the mine slave, he almost raped someone else. Such a ruthless person is rare among mixed breeds, so naturally it is scary. Without stopping here, Chu Ming continued to walk deeper. He searched inside for a while and finally saw the target of his trip, a hybrid with thick hair and a gray wolf look. This werewolf boy has no name like the vampire boy. Because of his manic personality and his tendency to seek revenge, the hybrids in the mine generally call him a wild wolf. Wherever there are people, there are rivers and lakes, even in this small brownstone mine. The hundreds of mining slaves in this mine are divided into several gangs because of their appearance, strength, tendencies, etc. Among them, the 6-member Wild Wolf gang led by the Wild Wolf has occupied this entire mining area. Kid, is that you? Sensing Chu Ming's approach, the Wild Wolf, who was lying on the ground with his eyes closed to rest, opened his eyes and stared at him with stern eyes. What are you doing here? Chu Ming seemed not to notice the wariness in the young man's eyes, and sat on the ground carelessly. How's Simon doing now? Simon, that is, the guy who had a fight with Chu Ming the day before yesterday and almost got sucked into having love with him. The Brown Ghost gang he leads is the largest gang in the mine, and it is also an assistant to the human supervisors in controlling the mine slaves. The Brown Ghost gang has a different stance from all the mining slaves. They often cause trouble to the mining slaves and are hated by other gangs. Thinking of Chu Ming's ruthless behavior the day before yesterday, a strange look flashed in Yilang's eyes, but when he mentioned Simon, he couldn't help but laugh. Oh, how could those humans be willing to let such an obedient dog like Simon die? That's such a shame. Chu Ming regretted, then looked up at the young man. Simon, let's not mention it for now. I need 2 baskets of ore now. You can help me find them. When the werewolf heard this, he was stunned for a moment and looked at Chu Ming strangely, as if he was wondering when the two of them had become so familiar. Seeing his reaction, Chu Ming sighed. Boss Wild Wolf, I went to such great lengths to deal with Simon the day before yesterday not because of impulsiveness but to vote for the Wild Wolf gang. In fact, the vampire boy ran to fight with Simon the day before yesterday without thinking about anything at all, because he was too impulsive. But Chu Ming could turn black into white, and immediately stunned the Wild Wolf. You mean to join the Wild Wolf gang? Yes, I have admired Boss Wild Wolf for a long time, but I have never had the chance to express myself. After listening, the Wild Wolf's ears twitched, its big tail couldn't help but shake, and a look of excitement appeared on its face. It's just that the boy in front of him has offended Simon. If he takes the boy in, maybe the Wild Wolf gang will suffer revenge from Simon. Thinking of this, the Wild Wolf began to hesitate again. Seemingly seeing the hesitation on the man's face, Chu Ming smiled lightly and said, Boss Wild Wolf, there is no need to worry. As long as we don't tell anyone within the gang, no one will know that I joined the Wild Wolf gang. And as long as I am given enough recovery time, I will go find Simon again, so that everyone can have a good rest for a few days without worrying. I have to say that Chu Ming's words were very tempting, and the Wild Wolf was immediately attracted. You know, since Simon was beaten by Chu Ming, the Brown Ghost gang has not come to trouble them in the past 2 days. If Chu Ming could entangle Simon, then they would indeed live a much more comfortable life. After hesitating for a while, the Wild Wolf gritted his teeth and smiled. Kid, welcome to join the Wild Wolf gang. Chu Ming held the young man's hand and said with a smile, it's an honor. But before that, please ask the gang leader to prepare 2 baskets of brown stones for me. There is still enough blood food. Brownstone is easy to talk about. The wild wolf pondered for a while, then looked at the boy. What do you want blood food for? Chu Ming explained. The power of a vampire comes from blood. If there is plenty of blood, I can recover my body faster to deal with Simon. Is this so? The wild wolf was silent for a moment and stretched out his arms. My blood is full of active power, which should allow you to recover faster. It helped a lot. Chu Ming walked up to the young man, suppressed his instinctive nausea, and took a bite. Bloodthirsty. The vampire boy's ability was activated, and the blood from the wild wolf's body was attracted, and bees pupated out of his mouth. After a few seconds, Chu Ming raised his head, and a flash of violent blood flashed through his eyes, but he was quickly restrained. After the bloodthirsty ability is activated, it can accumulate a certain amount of blood power for Chu Ming's body. This power can be used to restore himself, and can also be used to strengthen the body's strength. It also has a certain effect on cultivation. The disadvantage is that after activating bloodthirsty, the owner of the body will temporarily fall into a violent and bloodthirsty state, turning into a brainless beast and gradually approaching darkness. But in order to quickly recover his body, prepare for practice, and cope with changes in the situation, Chu Ming currently has no choice but to rely on the power of vampires. However, although bloodthirsty has many shortcomings, the effect is also very amazing. Under the gaze of the wild wolf, in just a few minutes, Chu Ming's wounds recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a while, the scabs fell off, revealing the boy's fair and smooth skin. Chu Ming moved his body and tried to operate the secret method. He was surprised to find that the secret method practice that was originally slow progressed a lot faster. It seems the bloodlust is indeed at work. The wild wolf on the side covered his arms, stared at the boy closely and asked, "How is it?" Chu Ming moved his body, and his bones made a crisp sound. "This power has been fully restored. I will appear when Simon comes to cause trouble. But before that, I still need to make some preparations. If there's nothing else, please don't look for me, Boss Wild Wolf." After saying that, Chu Ming said goodbye to the wild wolf and walked deeper into the mine. The wild wolf stood there with a stiff expression on his face, feeling inexplicably as if he had recruited an old man into the gang. "Oh, forget it," he sighed and watched the boy's back disappear into the darkness. In the mine passage, Chu Ming was thinking and walking aimlessly. In fact, when Simon recovers, even if he doesn't go to Simon, Simon will come to him. The grudge between him and Simon had been settled 2 days ago. If Chu Ming didn't teach him a profound lesson, he would never be able to find stability in this mine in the future. Walking into the darkness, Chu Ming found a piece of flat ground and sat up cross-legged. In the final analysis, it's still not strong enough. Taking a deep breath, he entered a state of meditation. 1 month later, Chu Ming opened his bright eyes from the darkness and clenched his powerful arms. Vampire Knight. Quality: dark gray. Race: mixed race. Skills: bloodthirsty, life enhancement, elementary. In this month, Chu Ming gained a lot. Now he has reached the level of a trainee knight, but unlike the human trainee knights who only have gray qualities, the quality of the vampire knight has reached dark gray. This comes from the gift of strength from the dark blood in his body. It's just that Chu Ming is not obsessed with the increase in strength. He knows that his current practice of the secret method of human knights is just a temporary compromise. The human knight's secret method cannot fully stimulate the power deep in the blood of the vampire boy. In other words, if he uses the secret method to cultivate to dark green, it is already over, and it is absolutely impossible to break through to the blue quality level. If you want to break through the blue level, you still have to get in touch with the Mythical school and find a way to obtain the secret of demonization. Or find a secret method suitable for hybrid training. Chu Ming stood up slowly, already having a rough plan in mind. If there were no accidents, he planned to use the knight's secret method to practice in the mine to the dark green level, and then try to break through the mine's defenses and go to the wider world outside to find a way forward. The shackles sounded, and Chu Ming slowly walked out of the darkness and walked towards the direction of the Wild Wolf gang. In this month, the Wild Wolf provided him with blood, and his cultivation speed accelerated a lot, so he was able to break through to the dark gray quality level in such a short period of time. However, although the cultivation speed is indeed very fast, the disadvantages of using bloodthirsty are also quickly revealed. Now he has begun to be affected by darkness, and his personality has become more bloodthirsty and violent. If his will hadn't been strong enough, he would have been dominated by his beastly instincts and turned into a bloodthirsty beast. The predecessor took action against Simon because he could not suppress his bloodthirsty instinct, so that he starved to death in the cage. Speaking of Simon, he should be back soon, Chu Ming said to himself. In the past few days, the activities of the Brown Ghost Gang have become more and more frequent, and some hybrids will even go deep into the mines to look for traces of him. All these anomalies indicate that Simon is coming back. Things turned out just as he expected. When he returned to the Wild Wolf Gang, Wild Wolf and the others were no longer there, leaving only one gang member with a rat head and a rat brain. "Kid, are you back?" the gang member pointed out anxiously. "The people from the Brown Ghost Gang came here just now and took away the gang leader. I heard that Simon is back. Are you here?" Chu Ming nodded. "I understand. Don't worry, I will bring the Wild Wolf boss back." After patting his shoulder, Chu Ming walked towards the direction of the Brown Ghost Gang. In the main mining area, kerosene lamps were lit, illuminating the Zhenghe mining area and the numb expressions of the mine slaves. In front, a knight wearing a bright silver blood-patterned breastplate glanced at the mine slaves below with an expressionless expression. "Sir, they are all here." The overseer on the side worked hard to please this noble knight from the mine. The knight's lips curled up slightly and he waved to a mixed-race boy beside him. The mixed-race young man with heterochromatic skin had his eyes brightened, his eyebrows lowered, and he bent over and walked up to the knight. "Honorable Lord Knight, may I ask if you have any orders?" "Well, I remember your name is Simon, right?" Simon heard this and said excitedly, "Yes, sir." The knight narrowed his eyes, looked at him like a pet, and patted his head gently. "Really well behaved. Do you still remember the secret technique I taught you this month? Go ahead and beat everyone here with it. When there is no one standing on the field, you have the qualifications to become my squire knight." "Yes, sir." Simon was so excited that he almost burst into tears. He knelt down on the ground, kowtowed humbly, and kissed the toes of the knight's boots. He had been waiting for this day for too long, and he could finally get rid of his mudblood identity and move towards a bright future. In the past, no matter how much he tried to please the overseers and guard knights and tried to distance himself from other mine slaves, in the eyes of these humans, he was just a humble slave from beginning to end, and all his actions were like a clown. But this Lord Knight is different. He is upright and kind and treats him equally. When he was almost drained of blood by that vampire, he saved him and personally taught him the secret method that can improve his strength. Simon's eyes flickered as he looked at the mine slaves in the audience. Although I don't know why this lord would ask to defeat these mudbloods, when he defeats them all, he will be able to break away from this humble identity and become a noble squire knight. Wait for me, vampire. At that time, he would raise his knight's sword and kill the vampire with his own hands. Simon put away his excited expression, stood up, changed from his humble posture, puffed out his chest proudly, and looked down upon the mine slaves in the audience. "Listen, you cheap slaves, I'll give you a chance to come up and defeat me." After the words fell, there was silence under the wooden platform, and no one responded. The knight behind Simon narrowed his eyes and glanced at the overseers. The two strong supervisors immediately straightened their bodies, walked to the front, pushed Simon away, and coldly scolded the mine slaves in the audience. "You all come here, whoever can defeat him will have meat to eat tonight." After saying that, several people took out a roasted beef leg and hung it on the wooden frame. The aroma wafted out, and there was a sudden commotion in the crowd. Some mine slaves' eyes began to turn green, their Adam's apple rolled, and they swallowed saliva. "Okay, go ahead, kid." The overseer pulled Simon back like he was handling cargo. "Yes, two adults." Faced with the orders of the two men, Simon bowed down obediently. But where no one could see, the young man clenched his teeth tightly and his eyes were cold. These two guys had always treated him with this disgusting attitude. "When I become a squire knight, I will settle the accounts with you." After the two walked away, Simon calmed down his expression, stood up and looked down at everyone. "A bunch of trash, no one dares to get in there." There was a commotion in the audience, but no one dared to come up. At this time, Chu Ming walked to the main mining area. He first glanced curiously at the arrogant Simon above, then walked into the crowd from behind, found the wild wolf, and patted him on the back. Who? The wild wolf looked back warily. When he saw that the person coming was Chu Ming, his upright wolf fears softened. He frowned and said, "Why are you here? Don't you know Simon has been looking for you?" Although his original idea was to let Chu Ming entangle Simon, when he thought that Chu Ming was already his little brother, he couldn't help but hesitate. Chu Ming spread his hands. "You can't escape. The mine is so big. If I don't show up, you will suffer." With Simon's character, if Chu Ming cannot be found, it is entirely possible to anger others. Although he didn't have a very good relationship with the Wild Wolf gang, he had sucked someone else's blood for a month, so he had to do something. Chu Ming looked upward, past Simon, towards the knight behind him who was wearing bright silver blood-patterned armor. His eyes stayed on that strange piece of armor for a while, then he turned back to the Wild Wolf and asked, "Who is that person?" "I don't know, but it's said to be a human knight," the Wild Wolf said, looking at Simon with mocking eyes. Simon is still too naive. He actually still dreams of becoming a squire knight. Doesn't he know that humans like to lie the most? Chu Ming followed the Wild Wolf's gaze to Simon and listened carefully to what happened just now. He said to the wolf, "Are you going to challenge Simon?" The Wild Wolf's face showed emotion. For him, eating meat was instinctive and he couldn't resist at all. But after hesitating for a while, he still shook his head. It's better to check the situation first. There will always be people who can't help but want to go up. As soon as the Wild Wolf finished speaking, someone couldn't help but rush forward. Chu Ming looked and saw that the man was thin and had fangs and claws. He rushed towards Simon quickly. Simon grinned. The secret method was working, and a violent emotion rose from his heart. "You are worthy of facing me," the young man roared angrily, and the dark aura spread out. He grabbed the mining slave who stepped forward to challenge him and threw him to the ground. Bang! Dust flew, and the thin mine slave couldn't even resist and fell directly to the ground. Simon's heart was already covered by rage at this time. Facing the mine slave who had lost the ability to resist, he refused to let him go. He grabbed him and tried to break his neck. Suddenly, a calm voice came from behind him. "Simon, don't hurt anyone." When the young man heard the knight's voice, his body stiffened, his eyes regained clarity, and he threw the mine slave boy out in fear. "Yes, I feel your mercy." In the audience, Chu Ming's eyes stayed on the dark aura wafting from Simon's body, and he fell into thinking. If I read it correctly, Simon seems to have used some kind of secret method when attacking people, which increased his physical strength by more than one level. And he seems to be unable to control this power, and may even be emotionally affected. This secret method is not like a normal knight's secret method. Instead, it looks like some kind of secret method specially developed for hybrids. Could it be that? Chu Ming's mind suddenly thought of a possibility, and he murmured, "Is this the secret method of demonization?" As soon as this conjecture appeared, Chu Ming's thoughts started to overflow like a flood. His mind was racing, and suddenly he seemed to think of something, and he suddenly looked up at the knight behind Simon. Simon cannot have mastered the secret of demonization out of nowhere. Someone must have taught it to him, maybe it was the knight behind him. Does that mean the knight behind him is from the Mythical school? Chu Ming was stunned. Why do people from the Mythical school appear here? The target he was looking for suddenly appeared in front of him. The first thing Chu Ming felt was not joy, but deep doubt. After all, according to the information he searched in reality, the Mythical school is just an academic organization that specializes in studying the secrets of demonization. But the fact now is that the knights of the Mythical school not only appear in the noble mines, but also seem to be related to hybrids. This shows that there are some omissions in the information he is looking for in reality, and his understanding of the Mythical school is only superficial. The knights of the Mythical school must have some purpose here. Maybe they want to use Simon to accomplish some purpose. We need to observe for a while longer. It's best to figure out what this knight wants to do. Chu Ming lowered his head and pondered, and suddenly his shoulder was hit. He looked up and saw the wolf waving to him. "Kid, I'm going to kill you." Chu Ming looked over and saw the wild wolf breathing heavily, looking like he was being dominated by instinct. He shook his head. Since the knight wouldn't let Simon hurt anyone, even if the wolf lost, he would only be injured at most, so there was no need to stop him. He just happened to observe Simon more below and find out the secret method of demonization. Ahead, the wild wolf stepped onto the wooden platform in a deep step and faced Simon. His hair exploded all over his body and his claws were revealed. There was no communication, the shackles shook, and the wild wolf howled and rushed directly towards Simon. When Simon saw that the person coming was a wild wolf, he grinned and started using his secret method. His violent emotions reappeared, and the dark aura surrounding his body became stronger and stronger. He jumped forward, tilted his head to easily avoid the wolf's claws, and punched the wolf in the abdomen. Puff! The wild wolf had a painful expression on his face, vomited acid water from his mouth, and fell to his knees. Hee. Just as Simon was about to laugh, blood flashed in the wild wolf's eyes, and he suddenly became angry and stretched out his claws to grab the main artery in his neck. A cold light flashed in the young man's eyes, he grabbed the sharp claw and pulled hard. In the wolf's painful howl, the fingers and claws were easily pulled out along with the flesh and blood. He lay on the wooden board, covering his bloody hands, and the pain surrounded him like a tide. Tisk tisk tisk, a wild wolf is nothing more than that. Simon sneered and kicked the wild wolf down. Under the stage, Chu Ming caught the wild wolf and took a deep look at Simon. The strength of the wild wolf is at the gray quality level, and Simon was originally at this level. But as soon as he uses the magic secret method, his power will directly increase to the dark gray quality level, and the wild wolf is naturally no match for him. On the stage, Simon looked at the wild wolf with disdain. Suddenly, he glanced at Chu Ming beside him. The boy's eyes widened, anger welling up in them. You are here. Chu Ming didn't reply. As if he didn't know him, he turned around and dragged the wild wolf into the crowd. The grudge between him and Simon would eventually be settled, but not now. At least until he understands the night's purpose. Simon looked down at Chu Ming's back on the stage and said grimly, "Are you afraid of me?" Chu Ming paused. Yes. After saying that, he ignored the young man on the stage and walked to the back. On the stage, Simon's face turned red and turned into the color of pig liver. For some reason, he felt even more uncomfortable after receiving the boy's recognition. Kid, you're next. Behind the crowd, Chu Ming put down the wild wolf and sighed. I'm not saying that, boss, you are too confident. I originally thought that he thought the wild wolf was prepared, but I didn't expect that he still overestimated the wild wolf. Yulang groaned in pain and grabbed Chu Ming's shoulders. He is very strong now, so don't go. Oh, I can't even think about it. Chu Ming shrugged, stood up, and looked towards the stage. Boom, another mixed race was knocked off the stage, and Simon looked at Chu Ming provocatively with a victor's attitude. Chu Ming's eyes stayed on him for a while, then looked at the knight behind him. As the enemies in front of Simon were defeated one by one, instead of showing a happy expression, the knight frowned. Chu Ming's mind moved. Does he want to see Simon lose? While he was still thinking, Simon kicked out a hybrid again. The minor slaves in the audience began to calm down, and for a while no one came up again. The young man on the stage glanced around and finally settled on Chu Ming. Kid, don't let me catch you. The knight and several overseers also followed Simon's gaze and stared at Chu Ming with interest, as if expecting his reaction. You asked for it. Chu Ming shook his head and walked forward. The mine slaves on both sides looked a little panicked when they saw it was Chu Ming, and they all backed down. The boy walked to the stage smoothly and stood opposite Simon. You attacked me last month. Are you ready to die this time? Simon's muscles were pulsing and his face showed morbid excitement. Chu Ming smiled slightly and raised his finger at him. Come here and bite me. Hateful. Simon's memories from a month ago were brought back, and anger instantly filled his heart. The aura all over his body became violent, and he rushed towards Chu Ming quickly. The rich dark aura overflowed from Simon's body. Chu Ming frowned, then dodged sideways and avoided his fist. The fist missed, and the boy was stunned for a moment, and was about to attack to the side. Suddenly, Chu Ming grabbed his head and pushed it directly to the ground. Simon fell to the ground, several teeth were broken, and blood spilled from his mouth. Die! He shouted furiously and attacked Chu Ming behind him. Since the knight was right behind him, Chu Ming did not dare to expose the power of the knight's secret method, so he had to retreat to avoid it. However, even though he retained most of his power, Simon was no match for him and was manipulated at his fingertips. Simon's punches fell into the air several times, and even the corners of his clothes could not be touched. No way, no way. The dark aura around Simon became stronger and stronger, and he began to become hysterical. Kid, you have to lie down for me today. Bloodshot eyes instantly covered his eyes, and the boy became like a monster and completely lost his mind. As he punched out, the dark aura around him turned into evil ghosts and rushed toward Chu Ming. Chu Ming frowned and glanced at the knight distractedly. I saw that the displeasure on the man's face had long since disappeared, and he showed an expectant smile. Really, he doesn't want Simon to win. Call. Chu Ming exhaled and his eyes instantly became serious. He wanted to see what the man was looking forward to. Chu Ming took a step back with his right foot, the muscles in his legs tightened, and then his whole body was launched like an arrow from a string. After narrowly escaping the attacks of the dark aura, he arrived in front of Simon in an instant. Before Simon could react, he was punched in the chin by Chu Ming. His head was hit hard, his eyes went black, and he flew up out of thin air. Immediately afterwards, Chu Ming hit Simon hard in the abdomen with another elbow. Blood spurted out of the boy's mouth, and he fell to the ground in pain, arching his body and losing the ability to resist. Chu Ming looked at Simon with a face full of pain indifferently and said, "You lost." Cough, cough, cough. Simon was instantly stimulated when he heard these words, and he coughed and got up. Impossible. Ahem. You can't defeat me. The young man's face was distorted, his inner obsession rose, and he stared at Chu Ming like an evil ghost. No one can stop me from becoming a knight. I am Knight Simon. As soon as he finished speaking, the dark creatures around Simon's body that were so dense that they were about to materialize surged into his 5 orifices. The color of the heterochromatic skin on his body became darker and darker, and some strange patterns appeared that made people look dizzy. As this demonization, Chu Ming was alert and kept retreating. With the infusion of darkness, Simon's strength at this time has already broken through the gray quality and reached the green quality level. Little brat. The knight squire. Simon's eyes lit up with blood and he walked towards him crookedly. Kid, run. Wild Wolf shouted anxiously in the audience. Chu Ming didn't respond. He glanced at the knight next to him and stood still. Run. Just when the Wild Wolf thought that Chu Ming was about to be caught, a flash of bright silver flashed across the lightning. The knight came to Simon with an afterimage, grabbed his neck, and lifted him up. Sir, my lord, the squire knight. Simon struggled manically, grabbing the man's gauntlet with his arms full of dark power. The knight instinctively frowned, but when he saw the strange twisting patterns on Simon's body, his brows suddenly relaxed. Simon, you did a great job. My lord, have I become a knight? A glimmer of hope appeared on Simon's twisted and painful face. Ha! He leaned close to Simon's ear and smiled contemptuously. How can a mudblood become my knight squire? You lied to me. Simon struggled hard, tears streaming from his eyes. The man's face was expressionless, his iron fingers tightened, and there was a sound of bones cracking in the young man's neck. He tilted his head and immediately lost the breath of life. Come here you two. The knight grabbed the boy's body and greeted the 2 overseers. You know how to do it. Yes, sir. The 2 overseers bowed their heads respectfully, carefully took Simon's demonized body and walked outside. When the supervisor disappeared at the end of the mine, the knight turned back and looked at Chu Ming. He praised. You are very good. What is your name? Chu Ming calmed down his expression and lowered his head slightly. My lord, I have no name. Is that so? The knight didn't seem surprised. He patted Chu Ming on the shoulder, walked in front of everyone, and said with a smile. Everyone, you can call me Knight Miller. I come from Niho College. Niho Academy. The mine slaves were commotion, staring closely at the man. Miller smiled knowingly and took out a scroll. I'm sorry for what happened to you, but life is not without opportunities for a do-over. Did you see the knight's secret in my hand? As long as someone can refine it, they will have the opportunity to be admitted as a knight and escape from the dirty mine. The opportunity is here, seize it yourself. After saying that, the man threw the scroll directly and turned around to leave. When he passed by Chu Ming, he put a scroll into Chu Ming's hand and said with a smile, You have a good talent, go for it. Yes, my lord. Chu Ming nodded and stood there watching the man leave. It wasn't until the man was out of sight that Chu Ming murmured, "When did Niho College have such a good night?" He opened the scroll and looked down. Secret technique of demonization. Quality: dark green. Skill: Return of Darkness. The Return of Darkness allows dark creatures or hybrids who practice this secret method to get closer to the depths of darkness and gain more power. Not surprisingly, the content inside is different from the normal night secrets. What the man gave them was not the secret of knighthood at all, but the secret of demonization. Thinking of Simon's body being moved away, Chu Ming touched his chin. Why does the Mythical school want to demonize corpses? And if one is not enough, they actually set their sights on all the mind slaves. It was originally thought that the Mythical school was a purely academic organization with the purpose of developing new secret techniques. Now it seems that it is not that simple. The Mythical school studies the secrets of demonization, and they must also understand the dangers of dark creatures. If they still want to explore the power of demonization, they must have other plans. It's a pity. There are too few clues now, and we can't find relevant information in reality. We can only take one step at a time. But the Knights of the Mythical School have appeared, and it is only a matter of time before they discover the secret. Putting away the secret technique in his hand, Chu Ming walked towards the wild wolf. "Boss Wild Wolf, are you okay?" The wild wolf covered his paws and looked at Chu Ming in surprise. "It's okay, it's just why did you become so strong? How do I remember?" "Shish, boss, just know what's going on." Chu Ming whispered something, pulled up the road where the wild wolf came and went. Along the way, the wild wolf gradually became less aware of the pain and his expression became relaxed. With Simon dead, peace will soon return to the mine. That's not necessarily the case. Chu Ming suddenly said. If Simon dies, another Simon will appear. And the Knights of the Mythical School are also coveting them secretly, with unclear purposes. I'm afraid it will be difficult to calm down in the days to come. After hearing this, Wild Wolf was silent for a moment, and then asked, is the secret method given by that knight really useful? Why, are you excited? If I could really become as powerful as Simon. Chu Ming shook his head and reminded, that is not a knight's secret method. In the end, you will lose your mind and become a monster if you practice it. Really? Wild Wolf looked outside the mine, showing a bit of longing, that would be better than dying here. Seeing the Wild Wolf like this, Chu Ming sighed and did not persuade him. Wild wolves are too eager for power and freedom. Whenever there is an opportunity, they will be like a drowning man seeing driftwood and grab it with all his strength. After all, for him, there was no worse outcome than being trapped in a mine. Even if Chu Ming listed to him the many dangers of practicing the demonic secret technique now, Wild Wolf would choose the demonic secret technique in the end. Chu Ming's knight's secret technique cannot be used by ordinary hybrids at all. He only managed to cultivate it by relying on the memory of the troll era and his bloodthirsty ability. If the average mixed-race person wants to cultivate to perfection, it may take 10 or 20 years, but it may not be effective. After walking in the dim mine for an unknown amount of time, they realized they had returned to the Wild Wolf gang when they saw several mixed breeds in front of them who were speculating uneasily. Putting the Wild Wolf down, Chu Ming was ready to leave. Etc. The wolf stopped him. Did you forget that piece of barbecue? You share it, just leave a piece for me. Chu Ming waved and walked into the darkness without looking back. Autumn turns to winter, and half a year has passed since the last time I met the knight of the Mythical School. Outside the mine, heavy snow is falling and a cold wind is blowing. In the underground mine, it is warm as spring. Deep in the mine, a place where other mine slaves dare not set foot, a young man is sitting cross-legged inside with a long breath. There were countless years in the cave. After a long time, a powerful aura came out of Chu Ming's body. He opened his eyes, and there was a flash of light inside. Official Knight, finally achieved. Next to it, the history book was flipping through the pages, and the cards on the left showed some changes. Vampire Knight. Quality: green. Race: mixed race. Skills: bloodthirsty, life enhancement intermediate. I didn't expect that he was just an official knight and could actually achieve green quality. It seems that there is untapped potential deep within the hybrid's body. With that said, Chu Ming took out a scroll from his arms. This was the secret method of demonization given to him by Miller. The quality of this volume of Secret Law is dark green, which can just fill the gap in the road behind Chu Ming. Maybe it can also break through the blue quality. But he just glanced at the secret method, shook his head and stuffed it into his arms. The secret method of demonization is beyond my control. Once I practice it, I can't go back. In the past 6 months, many mind slaves have begun to practice the secret method of demonization, including Wild Wolf. He and Wild Wolf met about once every 3 days, and every time he saw him, Chu Ming could feel the changes in Wild Wolf. Not only did his temper become more irritable, but even the beastly characteristics of his body became more obvious. In half a year, while groping alone, he obtained powerful power as he wished, and his strength was almost close to green quality. Chu Ming also suggested that he stop practicing. If he continues to practice like this, he will not be far away from becoming a demon. But how could the Wild Wolf, who had finally gained great strength, give up like this? He only listened to his advice openly, but was still practicing secretly behind his back. After seeing the shortcomings of the demonic secret method, Chu Ming became more vigilant. If he hadn't been in trouble, he wouldn't have even thought of using the magic secret technique. It's just that he has reached the end of the Universal Knight's secret method, and he doesn't dare to practice the magic secret method lightly, so what's the next step? Chu Ming set his sights on the Great Knight's secret method. The human secret method of the Grand Knight is not suitable for hybrids, and he can't find a suitable secret method for hybrids at present. In this case, why not develop a vampire secret method suitable for your own use? I can't develop a universal secret method suitable for hybrids. This is not only a problem of lack of experience, but also a lack of experimental conditions. But if it's just for my own use, I can use my own body as a test subject. With the history books of the years, even after death, I can still find out the secret method that vampires can use through countless failures. Chu Ming's eyes flickered as thoughts and inspiration collided in his mind, creating sparks of wisdom. What an amazing act it is to develop a secret technique. The Great Knight's secrets practiced by the Great Knights now are either handed down from ancient times, or created by some genius Great Knights in the Dark Age. And now he will follow in the footsteps of the sages and start to develop new secret techniques. I am still familiar with too few of the Great Knight's secret techniques. I need to learn more of the Great Knight's secret techniques to increase my confidence. In my current situation, I definitely don't have this condition. It seems that I have to rely on the power of technology. Chu Ming took a deep breath and took out the history book. The surrounding environment began to shake like an ink painting, and the next second, Chu Ming returned to the bedroom. As for what to do, he had already thought about it. After logging into the forum, Chu Ming slapped his hands on the keyboard and wrote the post title. On the secret method of the Great Knight, no one knows it better than me. Without stopping with his fingers, Chu Ming began to enter some of his insights into the secret method. I don't believe it. I'm so arrogant and no one has come. Jai walked into the room and looked over curiously. Master, what are you doing? The corners of Chu Ming's mouth curled up. Fishing. After the post was posted, Chu Ming waited patiently while browsing the forum. Countless posts and news were refreshed. Chu Ming glanced over and found a few posts that he was more interested in. The conflict between the mixed race card and the knight card occurred in the street. Is this the loss of human nature or the lack of morality? What should I do if the compatibility with hybrid cards cannot be improved? Wait online. Urgent. My card turned out to be a cat girl, drooling. As a card master, how can I get the rain and dew evenly so that both the hybrid cards and the knight cards feel comfortable? With the emergence of mixed race cards, some social problems have also begun to be exposed. Some of the resonant hybrid cards are hostile to other human cards, and some will even show disgust after coming into contact with the card master himself. The compatibility of the cards that just resonated dropped like crazy, which made some card masters very worried. Although there are only a few hybrid cards that can be resonated by card masters compared to human cards, in the face of a huge base, the conflict between humans and hybrids will be infinitely magnified. Chu Ming rolled the pulley with his fingers, and suddenly, an inconspicuous report caught his attention. Recently, the activities of dark creatures in the wilderness have been abnormal, and the Card Master Alliance has issued a Level 5 disaster alert. Card Masters, please try to avoid going out of the wall. Level 5 disaster alert. Surprise showed on his face. You should know that the level of disaster alert is the same as the quality of the card, and there are 7 levels in total. The 5-level disaster alert heralds the appearance of dark creatures with purple quality and strength in the wilderness near the giant wall. Could it be that the demonization crisis has spread in reality? This possibility cannot be ruled out. Chu Ming's eyes were calm, thinking about the impact of other worlds on reality. According to the current situation, if no changes are made, the demonization crisis will soon spread to the entire wilderness, and most of the wandering dark creatures will become demonized. And in Dawn City, the conflict between hybrids and humans is so acute. If we don't find a way to resolve it, there may be card defections or even card backlash. It's really troublesome. Chu Ming rubbed his temples helplessly. In the current history of the alien world, he is just a knight who has just come into contact with the Mythical school and obtained the secret method of demonization. Now, even the cultivation of his own strength has stagnated. He wants to deal with the Mythical school and prevent the spread of the demonic secret method, but he is unable to do so. Forget it, let's not worry about it for now, it's more important to find out the secret method first. Chu Ming shook his head to throw away his worries and clicked on the post he just posted. It seems that the title of his post was too arrogant, and several netizens were already confidently pointing him out below. After taking a look at the comments they posted, Chu Ming sighed. These card masters obviously only had a superficial understanding of it, and their comments were so wrong that he, a once legendary knight, couldn't stand them. But these are just small fish. He plans to use these small fish and bait to catch bigger fish, which is the real big knight. Yes, of course it's not just the Aborigines who have access to the internet these days. Some cards that keep pace with the times have also learned to use the internet. Chu Ming tapped the keyboard with his fingers, scolded several people mercilessly, and then turned off the computer. Fishing requires patience and no need to rush. Taking advantage of the waiting time, Chu Ming took out a pen and paper, sorted out his thoughts on the secret method, and began to formulate the framework of the vampire secret method. A week later, unknown knight, the hybrid secret method you mentioned is impossible to achieve. As long as the depth of blood is involved, the hybrid will slide into darkness very quickly. Chu Ming, I really can't do the secret method involving blue quality or above deep in the bloodline. Quote. Thank you for sharing. Chu Ming typed out the last few words and exhaled. He looked at the countless floors under the post, then sorted out the rough draft of the secret method in his hand, with the smile of an old farmer during a good harvest on his face. Although he has no clue about the secret method of hybrids with blue quality or above, but if it is only a dark green quality secret method, with the help of historical books, he is fully confident. It's time to start experimenting with the secrets of creation. Chu Ming held the history book in his hand, with golden light surging on it. The reality was distorted, and a dark brown rock wall appeared in front of him. The end of the Dark Age 14,835. In the dark mine, Chu Ming got familiar with his body and sat cross-legged on the ground. With the secret technique he had created crudely appearing in his mind, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes. The first secret operation begins. As the secret technique was operating, his body's heart suddenly accelerated, and the roar of blood resounded throughout the mine. After a while, Chu Ming suddenly opened his eyes. Before he could react, there was a bang and his whole body exploded into blood mist. The carrier died, and Chu Ming exited the writing state in confusion. This seems to be a problem with the operating speed. Please correct it. Write the next paragraph in the history book of time and let history move forward according to the previous trajectory. Taking advantage of the time gap, he optimized the rough draft and took out the history book again. It should work this time. The screen twisted, and Chu Ming returned to the mine again. The second secret operation begins. A few seconds later, a huge monster came out of the mine where Chu Ming was and wreaked havoc in the mine. It was killed on the spot by the knights who arrived. In reality, Chu Ming fell out of writing state. He gritted his teeth and said, I don't believe it. Let history move forward again, and he once again optimized the secret method. The third secret operation begins. Bang! Chu Ming was blown into blood mist again. The problem is back to the starting point. The fourth secret operation begins. There was no death this time, but Chu Ming suddenly grew 3 heads. The fifth secret operation begins. Bang, comma, failure, failure, failure. The experiment lasted for 3 days in total, and all 42 operations of the secret method failed. In the bedroom, Chu Ming's eyes were numb and he optimized the secret method again. Fail, come on. Anyway, I will keep experimenting until I succeed. Failure cannot stop me. The picture in his eyes twisted, the surrounding light dimmed, and Chu Ming returned to the dark mine. After posing, Chu Ming took a long breath. Come on, the 43rd secret operation begins. As the secret technique operates, Chu Ming's heartbeat speeds up and blood rushes through his blood vessels. Suddenly a strange feeling arose from deep within him, and he seemed to have a vision of himself being flooded with endless blood, and warmth enveloped his whole body. Slowly, he entered a deeper meditation, and his body instinctively operated the secret method. I don't know how much time passed before Chu Ming woke up from his deep sleep. The history book next to him glowed with golden light, and a new card appeared on it. Secret Book of Blood. Quality: dark green. Skill: Bloodline Leap. Bloodline Leap can improve vampire bloodline and gain more powerful talents and power. Chu Ming took the history book into his hands. After seeing the contents, he looked surprised and froze on the spot. Improve vampire bloodline. Why do I seem to have developed an incredible secret method? The method of cultivation in the secret code of blood is neither to comprehend the secrets like the Great Knight's secret technique, nor to strengthen the dark bloodline like the demonic secret technique. What the bloodline leap strengthens is the vampire bloodline itself, a bloodline that existed before darkness came to this land. Nowadays, scholars from other worlds generally equate vampire blood with dark blood, but according to the research of the Dark Research Institute, in fact, the vampire race once belonged to the righteous god, Blood Moon, in the Age of Gods. Although Blood Moon is not one of the 7 gods, there is no doubt about its power. Since the collapse of the Kingdom of God, the Blood Moon has disappeared without a trace. One of his vampires lost his protection and soon fell into darkness, and his bloodline was polluted by the darkness. After a long period of time, vampires have completely reduced to dark creatures in the Dark Age. I didn't expect that the secret book of blood could actually improve the original bloodline of a vampire. Chu Ming's face was full of disbelief. Even if this secret method was created by him, he never expected that the secret method would have such magical abilities. If you just improve your vampire bloodline and don't involve darkness, you should be able to escape the fate of the hybrid being demonized. But it is a pity that the secret book of blood is currently only of dark green quality. It can only be said to be useful. The road ahead still needs to be explored. After thinking about it, Chu Ming calmed down a little. If you want to upgrade the secret code of blood to above the blue quality, you must explore the power deep in the bloodline like a human knight, and this requires Chu Ming to find a way to optimize the secret code so that the bloodline leap ability of the secret code can also act on deep in the blood. In fact, the so-called bloodline depth is the home of the bloodline of all Inuit creatures, and it can be regarded as a gene bank. The depths of the bloodline are all-encompassing, hiding endless bloodlines, whether they are vampire bloodlines or human bloodlines, but the bloodlines of different races are relatively independent. If you want to make an analogy, you can think of deep bloodline as a backdoor left by the gods when they created the Inuit creatures. In the Age of Gods, darkness invaded and polluted the depths of blood. In order to maintain the purity of human blood, order imposed blood shackles and prohibited humans from exploring the depths of blood. But when Chu Ming led mankind to break the restrictions of bloodline shackles, mankind regained the key to the door to the depths of bloodline, thus opening Pandora's box. Now that thousands of years have passed, historically speaking, human beings have indeed gained greater strength and have used this to resist the tide of darkness. But this also led to the birth of hybrids. Moreover, human knights are more likely to be contaminated by darkness when exploring the depths of their bloodline, and thus transform into bloodthirsty monsters. I have a headache. The quality improvement of the secret code involves the depths of the bloodline. I have no clue at all. Chu Ming thought for a while with a grimace. Forget it, the dark green quality secret book of blood is enough for now. We'll discuss optimization issues after the cards reach dark green quality. He relaxed his frown, straightened his posture, and entered the meditative state again. The demonic symptoms of the slaves in the mine are becoming more and more obvious. Maybe in a few years, the Miller Knight from the Mythical school will return to the mine again. We don't know what he is going to do yet. It is safest to improve his own strength first. The secret method was operating, and Chu Ming was wrapped in a thin layer of blood mist, and a force was brewing in his body. 2 years later, the mining area where the Wild Wolf gang is located. Brush. An afterimage flew by, and Chu Ming easily dodged the swift blow by tilting his head. Opposite him, the Wild Wolf looked focused and kept punching him. Although Yi Lang's punches were very fast, Chu Ming's reaction was faster than him. He threw out several punches, but they all fell into the air. Seeing this, the Wild Wolf stopped attacking, his face full of depression. If we don't fight, the difference in strength is too big. Kid, I am the boss after all, why don't you give me some face? Chu Ming chuckled and said, Boss, your strength has almost caught up with the great human knights. You don't need me to hold back at all. After speaking, he looked at the Wild Wolf and paused for a moment on his bloodshot eyes. In the past 2 years, Yi Lang has concentrated on practicing the secret method of demonization. The demonic characteristics on his body have become more and more obvious, and his temper has become much more violent. Although this is still not comparable to Simon's original complete demonization, the Wild Wolf is now like a dynamite barrel filled with gunpowder, just waiting for a spark to ignite. Speaking of strength, Wild Wolf asked curiously, so what level is your strength now, kid? Chu Ming smiled and said nothing. After 2 years of practice, his strength has approached the dark green level, and he will have a big breakthrough in a few days. And what changes will occur in the improvement brought about by the improvement of vampire blood, and how it is different from the secret of the human knight, we have to wait until that day to reveal the secret. After the training, the two leaned against the rock wall to rest for a while. After chatting for a while, the Wild Wolf tilted his head, looked at Chu Ming, and suddenly asked, Kid, do you want to leave here? Chu Ming paused and thought and looked at the young man, do you want to go out? The Wild Wolf hugged his knees and looked up at the dark brown rock wall. I dream about getting out. But you're right, that guy named Miller has no good intentions at all. After practicing the secret method given by that guy, although my strength has become a lot stronger, I also feel that I am gradually becoming stranger. Sometimes I am afraid of myself now, and I am afraid that one day I will end up like Simon. If I don't go out, I'm afraid I won't have a chance. Chu Ming was silent for a moment and sighed. Why are you doing this? The current defense strength of the mine is still unknown. Chu Ming has the idea of escape, but he does not dare to say how sure he is. Ever since he saw the Knights of the Mythical school in the brownstone mine, he had even more doubts in his heart. Even he was like this, and the Wild Wolf was even more confused. He could only keep practicing the secret method of demonization to comfort himself. Even if Chu Ming promised him that he could take him out, Yi Lang would just smile and continue to practice the secret method of demonization in secret. Facing Chu Ming's sigh, the Wild Wolf grinned with a mouth full of fangs and said with a smile, even if I can go out and eat a hearty meal of meat, I will be satisfied. Is it that simple? The Wild Wolf laughed loudly and said. Otherwise, someone can't go out just to recognize their relatives, right? We hybrids are even more despised than dark creatures in the eyes of humans, and may even be betrayed by our own kind. Kid, you have to understand that no one can be trusted. Chu Ming punched him in the chest. What about you? The Wild Wolf smiled in astonishment. I am your boss. If you want to betray me, you must betray me first. Don't worry. Chu Ming stretched out his right hand. When the time comes, we will go out together. The Wild Wolf was stunned and held his hand. Good. Dark Age 14837. The spring rain was gloomy, and the breeze blew moist air into the mine. The cracked rock walls inside began to seep water, and the entire mine became more and more humid. Mosquitoes breed in the dirty water, and weeds grow wildly. Deep in the mine, Chu Ming gasped, retracted his fist, and ended today's training. Suddenly a mosquito flew over and made an annoying buzzing sound. Chu Ming glanced over. Brush. A bloody tentacle made entirely of blood pierced out of the young man's body and swallowed the mosquito directly. The blood rushed back, and the mosquito body fell into the palm of his hand. Call. After blowing it off in one breath, Chu Ming found a dry ground and sat down. He opened the history book and looked at the changed cards. Scarlet Knight. Quality. Dark green. Race. Mixed race. Skills. Bloodthirsty, blood surge, life enhancement advanced. The blood flow surges and can control one's own blood or the blood absorbed. Just yesterday, he used the secret book of blood to successfully break through to the dark green level. After his vampire bloodline was upgraded, he gained a new ability called Blood Surge, which gave him another way to control blood in battle. The card information displayed in the history book has also changed from Vampire Knight to Scarlet Knight. Since the secret code of blood was born out of the Great Knight's secret technique, there are many shadows of the Knight's secret technique in its content. It would not be too much to think of the secret code of blood as the vampire version of the Great Knight's secret technique, so his current card name cannot be separated from the title of Knight. But he had a vague hunch that as long as he could optimize the secret code to blue quality, he would completely break away from the influence of knights and walk on a path exclusive to vampires. Chu Ming stretched out his right hand, and the blood tentacle gushed out again, but this time, under his hard control, the tentacle began to slowly change its shape, gradually forming a very unstable blood spear. He was tense and tried hard to maintain the existence of the spear. Suddenly, another mosquito flew over, and Chu Ming's spirit was interrupted. The next second, the spear exploded, dyeing all the surrounding rock walls blood red. He looked helpless and sighed. Although the surge of blood gives him the ability to control blood, this ability is extremely unstable. Condensing blood tentacles or a bumpy blood wall is its limit. After the blood leaves his body, it will automatically disintegrate. It is completely impossible to create exquisite weapons such as the condensation spear, even after long training. It seems that the blood flow has reached its limit. If you want to go further, you have to find a way to increase your strength to the blue level. After patting the dust on his body, Chu Ming walked out. On the way, when he passed by a semi-collapsed water-logged mining area, he stopped and stared at it for a while. In the past, this was just an ordinary mining area. But just the day before yesterday, a demonic incident occurred here. After a mining slave had a quarrel with the supervisor, he suddenly became a demon and brutally murdered the supervisor and massacred all the slaves present. In the end, the guard knights rushed over and executed him on the spot. Chu Ming looked toward the middle of the mining area. After the mining area collapsed, rainwater seeped in these days and formed a puddle here. Before leaving, the knights cleaned up the mining area and took away all the corpses. But even though so many days have passed, there is still a lot of blood red left in the stagnant water. In the past few days, mine slaves have begun to become demonized and turned into irrational monsters. It seems that the knights of the Mythical school will appear in the mines soon. You have to prepare for your escape in advance. Chu Ming thought, walked around the puddle, and prepared to leave. Suddenly, a strong dark aura filled the air in front of the young man, and he felt a little restless in his heart. He glanced at the collapsed mine mouth, and there was a warning in his mind. Boom! Bloody water exploded. A blood shield suddenly erected on his body, deflecting the attack. Chu Ming looked intently, and the monster hidden in the darkness showed its true form, a black wolf with black mist all over its body. The black mist wolf lowered his body, bared his teeth and made a threatening sound to him. Black Mist Wolf, why are you here? Chu Ming couldn't help but frown. The Black Mist Wolf is a dark creature with green quality and strength. It is good at hiding its traces and is used to launching fatal blows to enemies in the dark. However, this kind of creature usually appears in groups. How could this black fog wolf appear here alone? Did it accidentally fall in from above? Chu Ming looked up at the mine entrance, which had been sealed by the supervisors, and shook his head. Probably not. We can only pass some running water here. Let's solve it first. After the words fell, Chu Ming stretched out his right hand and quickly drew several blood tentacles towards the Black Mist Wolf. Ouch! Brutal emotions flashed in Black Mist Wolf's eyes, and he quickly moved forward, dodging the blood tentacles, and attacked Chu Ming. Seeing this, Chu Ming raised the corners of his mouth slightly and clenched his right hand. Several tentacles of blood suddenly stirred into the middle, squeezing the Black Mist Wolf inside. Ouch! The Black Mist Wolf howled in pain, and as the pressure increased, all the organs in its body were crushed into mud by the blood. When the body of the Black Mist Wolf stopped twitching, Chu Ming turned the blood into tentacles again and casually threw it into a nearby pile of residual mines. Go back to the Wild Wolf gang to see what might have happened. Chu Ming's thoughts changed. He walked around the puddle and walked out. Along the way, Discarded wooden picks and brownstones scattered on the ground were everywhere, as if these mining slaves were suddenly attacked while mining and fled in panic. Chu Ming's eyes were calm. He looked around and looked at a dark corner in the mine. He could feel that there seemed to be a nauseating dark atmosphere hidden inside. You won't come out, right? A low roar from the darkness responded to him. Chu Ming moved upon hearing the sound, and blood tentacles shot out quickly. Immediately afterwards, there was only a sound of tearing flesh and blood and wailing, and silence returned to the darkness. As the mine invaded by dark creatures. Take one step and you'll encounter a dark creature. Chu Ming complained, quickened his pace, and soon returned to the mining area where the Wild Wolf gang was located. As expected, there was no one in the entire mining area, and everyone seemed to have fled to avoid danger. Traitor! Suddenly, an angry shout accompanied by a slight vibration came from outside the mine, pulling Chu Ming back to reality. Is this the voice of the knight named Miller? I didn't expect him to have returned to the mine. He moved slightly and walked out of the mine. In the mine, drizzle continued, and a mass of dark creatures roared and jumped into the mine, wreaking havoc on everything in the mine. Dozens of guards were in a mess, fighting on their own. They were unable to withstand the surging beast tide and were drowned in it. Among the crowd and the beasts, several Mithril knights wearing silver blood-patterned armor were fighting with a group of mysterious men in black dressed like thieves. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.